I'm drinking my Rockstar.
Hi, everybody on YouTube. We're kicking off the final week before Christmas. How are you all doing tonight? We appreciate each and every one of you hanging on out with us. I want to remind all of you that beforehand, before we get going here, that on the 24th and the 25th, I am taking those nights off, so that way I can rest and relax. We're also going to be taking off the night of the 31st, which is New Year's Eve. There will be replays on our website if you want to catch a show, but there will be no YouTube. And I'm sorry to disappoint you guys. I know you guys are pumped right up for stuff like that, but old Davey here needs a break every now and again. And I gotta tell you, like minutes ago, I got a message from my buddy, Little Marky Spender, who lives about 2 miles down the road from me, and the message is, "Watch your dogs. There was just a cougar in my yard." So now I got to watch the dogs for mountain lions, and because their territory is pretty good, especially when it's snowing the way it is here and they're hungry. Before we bring on our guests tonight, Paul Leach and Nicole Sakach, let's give a rundown of everybody who's in our chat room so far. Rex, good to kick things off. Brett Lewis, good to have you here. That means we can officially start the show. Solar Warden, good to see you here. Renee, always looking lovely. Bat Mom, you're looking bat-tastic tonight. The gorgeous and talented Becky Belling is here, everyone. Welcome. Hello there, lovely Steph Dickey in Florida. Good to see you. There she is, everyone. Alaska's greatest athlete, the gorgeous and talented Emily Bigelow. Welcome back, Em. Lovely to see you. Sandra Piper, you were looking stunning tonight. Gaspar, good to see you. The lovely and talented Nicole Sakach, everyone. Who is she? Well, she's one of our guests tonight. Yes. Aliens visit here. Where? Let me know. Where's Carl? Bigfoot Rob, good to see you. Nikki, always a pleasure. My favorite psychic. How are you, my beautiful friend? Dirty Filth, good to see you. Welcome. And hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Fast Hemi, good to have you here. Bee's Nest, thank you for coming in. Ethereal Aura, welcome back. And thank you for joining us. Science Bob is here, everyone. Science Bob is here. Welcome, Science Bob. We love you, man. And thank you for being a big quote in my TTSA story earlier on. We really do appreciate that. The gorgeous and talented Brandon, Manitoba's own Manitoba Becky. How are you, beautiful? Thank you for joining us. Troy SR71, Major League. Good to see you guys here as well. And this is going to kick. There it is. I knew it was going to kick. And Stu Gerson's here, everyone. Stu Gerson, good to have you here. Mr. Apnea, good to see you awake tonight. Lauren, hello. Desert Clam, appreciate you. Oob to Joe's Maine, we appreciate you coming on in as well. And thank you, buddy. You have aliens. Yes, you do. Burrito, good to have you here. Chris Moe, appreciate you. The Jim Christie, everyone. The Jim Christie. Swamp Monkey, Rich Hilke, the gorgeous Larry Schultz. How you guys doing? Welcome to the show again. Appreciate each and every one of you tuning on in. Long Island Bigfoot, Michael Lestuka, pardon me. Welcome back, my friend. Anthony Koths, good to see you joining us. And who else do we got here? Opa, to you, Greco. How you doing, man? Opa. Let's see what else. Who else we got here? As Kristen Alberg, looking talented and gorgeous, all the way in Singapore. There he is, everyone. Ibarata, good to have you here. Vintage Beard, good to have you joining us. Yola Tango, welcome. Sir Wolf, thank you for coming on in. Bark, bark to you. And I think we're caught up. If I missed you, I apologize. I do. But, oh, there he is, man, from UAPresearch.com, the handsome and talented Joel Griffin Dodd. There he is, and there will be poutine on the side. Sweet Donnie C, Millennium, good to have you guys here. And Paul Leach, Nicole Sakach is with us. We're going to talk about Paul's incredible docu-series called Proof. This is a good one. We're going to do them for 2 hours tonight. So they're going to go from the beginning of the show until 11 o'clock Pacific. And then at 11 o'clock, I'm going to hop on here because we got a lot of news with the TTSA today. And I'm going to be telling you guys how I got the story and kind of work with it from there. Donnie Don Matthew, former BC Lions head coach. How are you? Good to have you here. Bama Boom, good to see you. Paul and Nicole, how you guys doing? I guess I should turn you up.
Paul, and I'm doing. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
So this is Paul and Dave and Nicole. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be on the show. And for the Spaced Out Radio group, nice to meet you. And from Dave's introduction, sounds like you guys are the best looking group in North America.
They are gorgeous. Sean Logan is handsome too. We can't leave that out. Zach is a good looking guy. G West, well, you know what? Beautiful, as per usual. Mary Mo. She's a vegetarian. Mary Bond. There we go. Gorgeous Marie out of Los Angeles. See, you do have some hometown crowd there. We are about, 12 seconds away from launching this thing. We're going to have some fun. The super chat is open. Let's get this thing going, shall we? Central British Columbia to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, KPNL, and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Tonight, we are searching for proof. What is proof? How do we find proof? Where are we going with the proof that we need? Well, Proof is a series that confronts the controversial and refutes the irrefutable. Get ready to question what you think you know. Director Paul Leach of this 12-part series is here. He's a writer and producer, also known for The Woodsman and The Woodsman in 2016, and Proof here in 2020. We're also joined by his good friend, you know her around here as the UFO Huntress, Nicole Sakach, UFO Research Assistant to Grant Cameron and experiencer as well. Then at the top of hour number 3, we're going to go with them for 2 hours. At the top of hour number 3, we are going to talk straight TTSA. What happened today? Big news. I'll tell you all about how I got the story and was able to write a great article for spacedoutradio.com and for uapresearch.com, and we will get to that in hour 3. But first, let's get to it. Paul Leach, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. How are you?
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me, Dave and Nicole. And Dave, I just wanted to say, if you wanted to give people a little bit of a taste of what's going on since it's breaking news, I mean, feel free, please. I think everyone's pretty curious.
Yeah, we'll get to that in hour 3 because this is going to take me forever, man. It's going to take me forever. So you guys are more important right now, and we're glad to have you here, Paul and Nicole, who is a very, very good friend of this show. She's a veteran of this show as well. And, you know, Nicole, thank you so much for recommending Paul coming on Spaced Out Radio.
You know, it was kind of kismet. I knew he would be a good fit for this show. And like you said, Paul and I are old time friends. So it's nice to catch up with a friend on the radio with you and our lovely Spaced Out Radio crowd.
Yay me. Paul, how did you meet Nicole?
So this is sort of a funny story. And I asked Nicole if I could actually tell the story a little bit. She said it was fine. So back in college, or as you guys would say in Canada, university, my friend Mike was actually dating Nicole for, how long did you guys date for? A couple of years? 1 year?
Yeah, right around a year. Good old Michael.
So what happened was Mike would go down, because Nicole lived in Hillsborough, which is a few miles away from my university, and Mike would go down and visit her, and I would go down with him to visit Nicole, which sounds very weird at first, but actually what it was is actually Nicole had a sister, named Natalie. I don't know how much of this I should talk about, but she was sort of off and on single at that time, and we would all just hang out. Her mom was literally the coolest, Cindy. Like, we would all watch movies together, and her dad was super cool. He would play free cell downstairs, one at a time. And here's my very embarrassing thing. Are you okay if I say this, Nicole? I'm not sure if I should.
Oh, sure. You can't embarrass me on this show.
Well, it's really embarrassing for me, not so much for you. But so what happened was, so as time went on, obviously Nicole was dating Mike, and I was kind of feeling it with Natalie, sort of. And one day I actually kissed her, and she didn't kiss me back. I got the dead lips.
Oh, no. You got friend zoned.
Oh, it was, yeah. And so what did I do? I actually kissed her again, because I was like, this can't be right. And I kissed her again, and she gave me the dead lips again, and she was like, you kissed me. And so I didn't know what else to say. So I was like, yeah, I kissed all my friends, and I left.
That's
never
perfect.
to be seen again. Yeah, it was in did you heard about
story?
The story, Nikki? What did you hear about this story when you heard it from Natalie?
Just that you kissed her, and you kissed her again.
That's it.
Oh man. I
didn't know that the rest of it, whatever you can.
Now, Nikki is having a little bit of audio problems, just so everybody knows, because
she probably on it.
But because I guess there is a storm rolling through Illinois right now, so she's going to try and do her best. Paul, in regards to you and learning a little bit about you, how did you get involved with film and documentaries?
Oh, guys, that's such a good question. Actually, I have my degree in theater and my degree in music. And long story short, I've performed all over the world, actually. And I used to be on a soap opera called Days of Our Lives. And so what happened was I actually started also writing projects. So currently I have like 3 or 4 features which have been produced. I'm part of the Writers Guild. I also just qualified to be part of the Producers Guild. Proof is the first docu-series I've done with Hoplite Entertainment, and Hoplite is an Emmy-winning production company. And actually, I was working on my second series with them called Crime Tech, which stopped during COVID. But I've always been very, very interested in sort of paranormal, supernatural stuff. And they actually came to me. The showrunner said, hey, we want to do a paranormal show. What do you got? So I did a lot of research, and I said, let's call it Proof, because when you come from TV and film, the thing that causes drama and interest is actually conflict, when people have conflicting views on things. And what happens is when you watch a lot of documentaries, it's sort of like an echo chamber. It's people trying to push you one direction, for sure. And so what I really wanted to do is I wanted to provide opposing opinions from experts. In this way, in the third act, you get people who are experts on each side, both of skepticism and belief, who literally present you their sides of the story. This way that you as an audience get a full picture and you can make up your own mind. Obviously, we at the company, we were leaning a little bit more towards belief. So the thing is that kind of leaks through a little bit. Like I always gave the believers the last line in the episodes. But what I really wanted is I really actually wanted both experts to actually kind of sit in the same room while I moderated and then sort of argue it out. What happened, though, is no one really wanted to do that. They didn't want to have an argument with anybody or, have some really heated discussions. So we just filmed everyone individually, and I had my list of questions. But that's how I got involved in sort of this show and this space. It just ended up being something I was very interested in.
Did you ever have any personal experiences that kind of led to this, to open up that curiosity? Or was it the hype of everything the last 15, 18 years of what you saw on television that really said, you know what, there's something to this. I got to learn about it.
That's a great question, Dave. And, honestly, right along with this, I'm sure that both you and Nikki have had a lot of experiences. I know you mentioned that. So hopefully as we go through some of these episodes, you will actually tell me and your audience, who maybe they've already heard it, some of your experiences in these things as well, because that would be very interesting. I personally have seen sort of what I thought was a UFO when I was a kid. I'm not really sure. I've also experienced some sort of supernatural things in my home before, but I generally have more of an opinion of, I really believe more in metaphysical things. I think that there's much more to the world than we know, than what's just physical. You know, I'm just knocking on wood right now. I did study quantum physics for a little bit. And there's some really interesting things like with that we can discuss. I came up with a theory, which I call womb theory, which is very maybe weird, and maybe you guys can tell me what you think, you guys out there in Space Star Radio. The idea follows an idea in quantum physics, which is called supersymmetry. And supersymmetry, or SUSY for short, is basically the idea that they're repeating patterns to the universe, sort of like the Fibonacci series or the golden ratio or the Mandelbrot set. I don't know, do any of you guys out there know what the golden ratio is? Dave, maybe you could explain it to your audience.
Oh, goodness. That's why I have Science Bob with his doctorate from at Virginia Tech University. I'm a woo guy, man. I'm a woo guy.
Okay, so for you guys, just
tackle the golden ratio in ufology in certain cases, though it has come up.
Amazing. So for you guys out there who are listening, just to give you guys context, because I think it's very important just to not talk about things you don't know what I'm talking about. So the golden ratio is based on the Fibonacci series. And the Fibonacci series is you take a series of numbers, so it's 1 + 1 = 2. And you take the last two numbers, which are 1 and 1, which is 2, and then the 1 and the 2, and add those together, which is 3, right? And then the 2 and the 3 you add together, which is 5, and the 3 and the 5 you add together, which is 8. So you always add the last two numbers to get the next number, and that's called the Fibonacci series. Now, if you graph that out, what you have is you have a perfect rectangle and a perfect square, which are hooked up to each other. I know some of you out there are probably already typing away that you know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe someone can post a picture of it. But what you have is if you connect the vertices of the segments of that perfect square and that perfect rectangle, you get this spiral shape. And that spiral is a spiral of all of nature. It's literally the spiral of galaxies, it's the spiral of waves, it's the way bees dance, it's the way flowers and leaves are shaped, it's the way your face is shaped. It's the Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, where you see that guy standing out with his arms splayed, arms and legs straight out, where you see those proportions in his body. So you guys at home, I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to look at your hand for a second. Now, I want you to look at the base of your hand to where your fingers start, and then look at the base of your hand to your fingertips. So if you look at the place where your fingers start in your hand, that is right at the golden proportion or the golden ratio. Now, if you look at one fingertip or one finger, look at the base of your finger to your first knuckle and the base of your finger to your fingertip. That is also the golden ratio. Everywhere in your body, like where your eyes are situated in your head, it's a little bit more than a half and a little bit less than, 2/3. That's the golden ratio. Every single part of your body is that way. So this is sort of like a template, which seems like for all of nature. Maybe Nikki can talk a little bit more about when she's seen the Fibonacci series dealing with like alien stuff, like using that as an idea that there is repeating patterns to the universe, that there is supersymmetry. I have this idea, and this all relates. I know you guys are like, well, this is a tangent. Well, it is sort of, but it's coming back, and this is how I'm going to connect it back to what we were talking about. Like, why do you believe in the supernatural, or why is there other things out there besides what we see? So my suspicion is that I have something which I call womb theory. So for instance, Dave, when you were in your mother's womb, like when you were in her uterus,
okay,
right? You actually existed in the real world, right?
I think so.
Right. So you existed where there were stars, trees, mountains, mountain lions outside, and snow, but you never actually saw it. You didn't taste it. You didn't touch it. All you knew was the inside of your mom's uterus, even though you existed in a much larger world. Would you say that's accurate?
I think so. I can go with that.
So then what happens is you're born at one point out of your mother into the world that you always existed in, but never knew it, never knew, you didn't know it because you're in your mom's womb. So what if we now, using supersymmetry as an example, exist in another womb? What if the world that we exist in or that we see is actually like living inside the uterus, and a much greater reality exists around us that we don't really see, touch, taste, hear, not really. So what if we're existing now in another womb? Now, if you take this a little step further, when you were in your mom's uterus, right, you had organs which are meant for the outside world, your eyes, your nose, your sense of taste, your sense of touch. You couldn't, I mean, those organs really weren't meant for inside the womb, but they were meant for outside the womb. So what if we now have some sort of senses, maybe not physical organs, but what if there's some sort of abilities that we have within us that are meant for the greater world outside the womb that we live in? So then you ask yourself, well, what does that mean? You know, let's ask ourselves, what does that mean? So you can look at something what we call negative space. And what I mean by negative space is for instance, our sense of hearing. You know, if we never knew what hearing was, we would go around in the world and we couldn't actually relate to the sense of hearing because we have no concept or way to relate to what hearing is. But if I was talking to you, you know, Dave, or to you, Nikki, and you're in the same room and you're on opposite sides of me, I would have to look back and forth between you to have conversations with you. But I could actually have a conversation with both of you if I could actually hear. So there's a negative space there. There's an ability or something that the sense of hearing would fill. Does that make sense?
It's getting there.
Yes, hello?
It's getting there.
Okay. So what negative space is that if you didn't have a sense of hearing, that there's some things that would occur which would fill, like the sense of hearing fills a negative space, or the sense of sight fills a negative space if we didn't have it. So what if we have abilities or organs, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, that are meant for outside the womb? So where would that negative space be? Where are we missing things? So maybe I walk into a room and I say, hey, Nikki, what's going on? How are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm good. But then I'm like, you know what? I don't think she's doing good. I think she twisted her ankle just by looking at her, right? Maybe I just knew. Maybe I could sense the electromagnetic waves around her ankle. Like, what if that was possible? Like, what if there was negative space? So anyways, all that is to say, I don't know that this is true. I'm just throwing something out there. I'm at no point saying any of this is true. I'm just throwing things out there for a discussion. But what if it was true? So what that means is that there probably is a much greater reality. So for instance, I'll wrap this up so we can get to other stuff, but you know, the idea of dark matter. So dark matter, I mean, I think you guys know. If you don't know, I just want to talk about it. You guys don't know what it is, but you know, dark matter, really what that is, it makes up for missing gravity. So there's 4 forces in the universe according to physics. There's the strong and the weak force, which are, you know, nucleic forces. I think Science Bob knows this. So there are nucleic forces, and then there's electromagnetic force, and then there's gravity. But gravity is very, very weak. Very, very weak. So if I put a paperclip on the desk in front of you, and then I held a refrigerator magnet 1/2 of an inch over that paperclip, the paperclip would literally, quote unquote, defy gravity and go up into that magnet. That means that that magnet has greater force than the gravitational force of the Earth on that paperclip. So gravity is very weak. So the problem is that there is not enough gravity in the universe to hold the universe together. And that is the idea of dark matter, that there's something else out there which is actually holding the universe together, which is very interesting. So what that means is maybe there's things beyond our sight, right? That there's things that are out there that we don't see and we don't know about.
Let's see here. Science Bob dropped a gluon in the chat room here. And so for people who don't know what a gluon is, I actually asked him, I said, what the hell is a gluon? And he goes, and so I had to Google it. It is an elementary particle that acts as the exchange particle or gauge boson for the strong force between quarks. It is analogous to the exchange of photons in the electromagnetic force between two charged particles. Apparently we need some of that. Apparently we do.
Science Bob just talked way over my head right there.
Yes.
Thank you, though.
Strong nuclear force. Yes.
Yeah, it's part of the strong nuclear force. Yep.
Exactly. So as we look at everything and all of these magical ideas that you went into with Proof, your docu-series here, you know, do you believe, as we got about 3 minutes to go here, Paul, before we go to break at the bottom of the hour, that there is some sort of phenomena or human ability that we have forgotten through time in order to take on things like ESP, telepathy, telekinesis, projects like that?
I think there's something to it. But what I'd really like to find is proof. You know, one thing we wanted to really cover is, you know, belief is not enough. You know, I can believe that this apple in front of me is a radish. It doesn't make it a radish. I can believe all I want. And so, yes, I personally believe that, as we talked about, that, you know, there's life outside the womb. But what can we do to prove it? And I think that's the big thing, is trying to find ways that we can actually substantially and irrevocably show that things are real or that they're not real.
Nicole, what do you think?
Well, I think the womb theory is beautifully explained. Honestly, I think it's as good a theory as anything else we have spinning out there right now. And I think a lot of what you were just saying harkens to a lot of things that we discuss in ufology. And just based on like your show episodes here, I found it so wonderful that you guys took time to kind of study each of these varying types of phenomenon. But what I noticed was that as I was watching, I kind of ticked them off. I was like, well, like the first episode is on ESP that has direct ties into ufology, as does the miracles episode and the shadow people episode and the cryptids and secret societies. And I could go on down the list. And so that brings me to like the theories of Jacques Vallée, that this is all the same sort of phenomenon. And just to hit home with your Fibonacci sequence, golden ratio chat from earlier, you know, the first case that came to mind, ufology wise, is also a case that's celebrating its 40th year anniversary on the 26th of December. And that's the Rendlesham Forest Enigma case. And I know our listeners probably know, but I'm not sure, Paul, if you're familiar with it, but they call the Rendlesham Forest incident the Roswell, Britain's Roswell. And long story short, they encountered a craft in the forest. One of them touched it. He was downloaded with a binary code. And from that code, they have, many researchers and mathematicians have deduced from the code 6 or 7 locations on the planet.
Nicole, I'm going to get you to cut off right there because we do got to go to break. We'll talk about this and more with Proof. Director Paul Leach, Nicole Sakach on Spaced Out Radio, coming up in the next half hour. All right, guys, we're clear. Sorry about that.
Oh, I could have squeezed it in another 30 seconds.
I didn't have 30 seconds.
I know.
I would love for you to. Well, actually, I'd love for you to kind of explain that a little more. Yeah, it'd be really
Well,
great. I listened to a couple of your podcasts because I kind of wanted to get a feel for how it goes and everything. And one thing that I guess I wish I had a little bit more is you guys are talking about a lot of stuff that a newcomer from the outside has no context for. Like, you mention things, but I'm like, I don't know what that is. Can someone just kind of fill me in just in case, like, I'm listening for the first time? So I would love for you to, maybe talk a little bit more about that so I can kind of get it too.
Yeah, we'll continue with that, Nicole, with your breakdown of Rendlesham when we come back from the break. How about that?
Sounds great.
Yes.
We are still live.
Great.
We are still live on YouTube right now, but, this is commercial break time. We can't forget the radio people. Can't forget the radio people.
I know. I think our YouTube crowd loves Rendlesham Forest, though.
They do.
As much as I do.
Yeah, interested to hear about it.
I might be the only, I know I'm not the only ufologist that celebrates Boxing Day. It's like, oh, it's Christmas and Boxing Day, all because of Rendlesham Forest. So
I'm surprised you actually call it Boxing Day.
Well, I have to. That's what Jim Peniston calls it. And I actually call or message Jim Peniston, or at least I have for the last 3 years. I message him on Boxing Day, and I thank him for continuing to tell his story over the last 40 years now, because it was one of the first stories that I believed in ufology and that I heavily researched over decades. So it was, yeah, it's special to me now. And I'll say that because, yeah, I've looked at it from every angle and I can't help but be biased now. So get Jim Peniston's book, The Rendlesham Forest Enigma. It's definitive.
I mean, Nikki, I'd like to hear on air. I'll ask you is just how you got so involved in all this stuff, because I don't remember you ever being interested in this back in university. So
she got aliens, man. She got aliens.
I actually got aliened a few years prior to meeting you, Paul, and it was just one of those. I told my mom, and I talked about it with the two friends that were there with me. And then I had to just kind of drop it and leave it alone for many years, 4 or 5 years after my first encounter.
Never came up in any of our long conversations and hanging out. This never came up one time. I'm just like, what?
It didn't. I didn't talk about it then. And if you remember correctly, I was actually still in high school when I was dating Michael. So I wasn't at university yet. And
that part slipped my mind.
That was my senior year. It was my second semester of my senior year when I met Michael. And he was actually the student teacher in my mom's classroom, which is how I met him.
Oh my gosh, is that what happened? Oh man.
Yeah, that's what happened.
It sounds so bad.
Hold on, Paul, you were on Days of Our Lives, and now you played in Days of Nicole's Lives too?
Apparently. Apparently, it's just drama everywhere.
Holy cow! I feel like feel like our commercial break should like go out with some sort of music.
Is this live broadcasting now, though? Do people hear this?
Yeah, we're hearing this on YouTube.
Sorry about this, YouTube. We're hearing all these terrible things.
No, but my parents never let me date guys out of high school until Michael. And it was honestly only because he was such a great guy, and so are you. You were one of his great friends,
Good save, Nicole. Good save.
My parents knew that they were upstanding individuals, I guess I should say, that they weren't just random hooligan kids from college.
Well, apparently your mom knew since Mike was a student teacher at the school. Jeez.
Yeah, my mom set us up.
Oh my gosh. This is right out of soap opera land. Right out of my ears cannot take this. Everyone, hold on. We got about 15 seconds here. I want to say a big thank you to Alaska's greatest athlete, Ladybug Bigelow, Emily there, and Grendel for the super chats. Thank you to everybody who's given us a thumbs up. We are just over 200 away from 10,000 on our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. We really do appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with Proof tonight. Our guest, director Paul Leach, Nicole Sakach. And right before the break, Nicole, you were kind of breaking down what happened on Boxing Day way, way long ago at Rendlesham Forest.
I was. It's actually 99 days after the day I was born. The craft landed at Rendlesham Forest. That cracks me up. But so I think where I left off was from touching this craft, there were 4 or 5 symbols on the craft. And Jim had touched the biggest symbol. And when he touched it, he was downloaded. At the time, he just called it ones and zeros. And later on, it kind of, developed into this binary code. I think Linda Moulton Howe was who discovered it in his journal and was like, this is binary code. This isn't just senseless numbers. So mathematicians went to work. They got locations from this binary code. And once they started down the math route of all of it, they... I think his co-author of the book, Gary Osborne, noticed that the locations could all be connected by the golden ratio and the spiral effect of it. And they've laid it out across the globe. I mean, I think most of us know the locations. The most well-known location is the Giza Plateau. There's one in Mexico. High Brazil is a location. Sedona, Arizona is a location. And I'm forgetting the rest. I actually loaned out my book, or I would grab it right now and look it up for us. But anyways, continuing with the golden ratio, they also applied it to the symbols that were on the craft as well. And that's part of their continuing research. And I think all of us know Carl Sagan's love-hate relationship with ufology. But one thing that rings true with Carl Sagan is he said that if we were to find proof of alien life, it would probably come in the form of the fine structure constant. And I think we know when you apply the Fibonacci sequence and the golden structure, it leads to the fine structure constant, which is what we're finding in the Rendlesham Enigma. So, and that will be part of their book too, that I know Gary Osborne is writing furiously on. So it's just interesting that these theories do kind of cross over and mathematics come into play. And I often say that's one of the best reasons I love ufology, is because it bridges the spiritual, the paranormal, ufology, the political. We find a home in ufology with it. So
very interesting.
So Nikki, you mentioned the fine structure constant? I'm not familiar with that. Can you tell me what that is?
The fine structure constant. I don't have my Google machine to give you a direct quote, but I can send you information on it. I wasn't prepared to talk fine structure constant tonight. and the golden
Unbelievable.
Also known as Summerfield's
years.
constant, commonly denoted by the Greek letter A for alpha, is a fundamental physical constant which quantifies the strength of electromagnetic interaction between elementary charged particles. There. That just pulled that out of my brain. What do I know?
I think I need Science Bob to explain that a little better. But
Yes. Yes. So,
We'll bring you back on with Science Bob and Friends. Part 2. But that's just,
So,
that's just one case off the top of my head. I know that there are many other brilliant researchers out there that are pushing the envelope in areas like this, applying quantum theory to the phenomenon. And yeah, it's definitely worth exploring. But one of my favorite episodes of Proof, I think, was the Cryptids episode. And I think we could segue into that with our spaced out radio crowd. And Dave could definitely talk cryptids for hours. So I want to hear more inspired that particular episode.
Sure.
Well, generally speaking, just so you guys know, and your spaced out radio gang knows that when I picked out the episodes for Proof specifically, I didn't want to do that much well-trodden territory. I mean, cryptids is a well-trodden territory, but if you look at the episodes, it's like electric voice phenomena, shadow people. They're things that are there, but aren't like the super popular ones. Like, we have aliens, but alien abductions specifically. And, probably Nick, I'd like to hear that story that we didn't get a chance to talk about when we get to that episode and stuff. But generally speaking, the episodes are trying to cover stuff that isn't always so spotlighted. But cryptids is very, very interesting. I'm kind of curious what your experiences have been with that. I guess, Dave, you've had some.
Oh yeah, I'm a Bigfoot guy. I'm a very big believer. Like I always say to people, when you finally have that experience and you see something of that phenomena, it doesn't matter what counter it is, you automatically believe that it is truly going on. I mean, when I had my Bigfoot encounter in 2013, I was within 100 feet of 2 of them. And since I moved up here, I've had other experiences as well, from seeing footprints to hearing them talk. So, I mean, what it is, what this creature is, what it happens to be, I don't know. What did you decipher from doing the cryptid one?
So there's a lot of talk on each side. From one thing is obviously we discover new creatures and species of animals constantly, particularly in the deep ocean. We find new species all the time. Hearing, because these interviews that boiled down, I edited them down to about 3 minutes per, and then edited them together. But I interviewed these people for over an hour each, so there's a lot of stuff that didn't make it in, like most of it. So getting a lot of information from these people, there obviously is a possibility that these things are real. But there's also from the other side, and this is one kind of a running theme when I did Proof, is that I was very surprised, and you guys can I'm kind of curious what your thoughts on these things are. In this day and age where everyone has a camera and some kind of phone or camera on them, there's remarkably little pictorial or video evidence today. Remarkably small. When I was doing my research, I was shocked. I thought there'd be a lot more, and it's very, very curious. So the skeptic side, and I'm just going to give you both sides because I think it's important that we don't live in an echo chamber for all you guys out there on, Spaced Out Radio. I know that we're all believers and stuff like that, but I think it's very important that we hear every side of the story because, look, honestly, if things are real, then they don't mind some criticism or some questioning because it's real, right? So I think it's very important that you get both sides and say, like, okay, this is interesting. From our skeptic side, he was talking quite a bit about, no dead bodies. Like you don't see any skeleton or skeletal remains of any of these giant creatures. Also, he said something very interesting too about most of the species that we find tend to be small, like, variations, like it's a different kind of fish, which is, there's this one with spots, but now we found one with spots and stripes. It's not like a drastically different thing. And for some reason, most of the cryptids that we talk about are these gigantic creatures like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Mothman, that they're these really huge creatures which seem to be hiding. Yeah, please jump in. What do you think, Nikki?
Where'd you go?
I was going to say what I find most interesting about cryptids is in my research along with ufology, I was stunned to find out the crossovers of these creatures. Like, for instance, down in Missouri here, Missouri MUFON has been holding an ongoing investigation of orbs that are appearing in different counties through Missouri. And these orbs sometimes appear in the sky, and a lot of times they appear to come out of a tree line. And so investigators down there set up, cameras, 3 different positions. They were out there with their investigative crew, and they happened to be alongside a riverbank. And lo and behold, they turned their cameras when they heard a sound, and they caught footage of a juvenile Bigfoot. And more often than not, I kept finding UFO ties to these cryptid encounters, even with Mothman. I had seen that movie. I had dug into a little bit of the research behind him and the Ohio Bridge and everything. And then I stumbled across all the UFO sightings in the area that coincided, and what we would call in ufology a UFO flap was happening at the same time as these Mothman appearances. And the lead investigator into Mothman was also a brilliant researcher in ufology. So he kind of started that crossover for me. And it's little stories like that come up here and there. We had Bigfoot, or who is it? The Bigfoot real hunters, I think, came to Montgomery County here in Illinois, all around your old university. We had a flap of Bigfoot sightings, and they came in and did a town hall and briefly did an investigation, but that was interesting too. So, and what I've discovered in my own personal research, aside from my own 2 sightings, is that there have been sightings. I think the earliest one I found personally in my research, there's been UFO sightings not only in my county and the surrounding counties that go back to 1968 is the earliest witness I've actually spoken with. So I'm sure there's more before. And yeah, it's fascinating to me. I don't know why they're often related, but that's part of what we're researching and trying to figure out through shows like this and discussing, discussions.
Well, one other thing too, when it comes to your question, Paul, about cameras, that I have noticed is I had and this has just happened to be about a month ago. I was driving out into the forest with my buddy and I had this beautiful lynx cat. I've never seen a lynx this up close and personal. Jump right in front of my vehicle, about 30, 40, 50 feet away, and just stood there, right in the middle of the logging road. I hit my brakes, and I'm just absolutely staring at this. I became all thumbs in trying to get my phone to take that picture. All thumbs. And I could not figure out how to use my phone. Literally, this cat looked at me. Okay, this 150 pound, 200 pound cat looked at me and my buddy, and it gave me this look of, really, I'm giving you the money shot right now, and you're screwing up with the camera. Like, I'm out of here. And it walked off, and it finally starts to goes into this ditch and starts climbing the tree. Finally get my camera going on my phone. I literally, no word of a lie, I open up the window of my truck, and I'm like, hey, puss, look this way for a second so I could get a picture. And it stopped, and it looked like, really, now? Fine. Let me take 4 pictures, and only one of the 4 turned out. But the point that I'm getting at is when I was face to face with an alien and I was face to face with Bigfoot, I had my phone on me. I did. But you see, the issue is, and this is the best way I can absolutely explain it. When you see something with your eyes that your brain cannot comprehend, you don't work. You don't think about it. You're trying to literally grasp every moment of that fleeting moment. You don't want to take your eyes off it. You don't want to move. And it's not because you don't want to get the photo or even the video. It's more so that for most of us out there, the majority, I would say, we don't have the ability to want to ruin that moment. We don't want to miss out on it in case by the time you reach down, you look at your phone, because you can't say to an alien in the forest or a Bigfoot or a dogman, can you hold on 1 second, please? I just got to hit my thumb button, get my thumbprint, get the phone going here. You just can't do that. It doesn't work that way. And that's probably the biggest issue that we have is we get nervous, we get scared, we get frantic. And when you see these creatures very close to you, not on television, but right in front of your very eyes, the last thing, believe it or not, that you think of is, I got to get a video of this, or I got to get a picture of this. Your mind literally goes through this moment like, can I really believe this is going on? Is this really happening to me right now? And it's ridiculous because, yes, it is. I should be able to reach into my pocket, grab my phone, and take that photo, but somehow you forget to do that in the moment. It's weird.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does happen.
What I was going to say is there any way that, like for me, and maybe for some of your audience who haven't heard your personal story, is there a way that you could kind of recount that? Because I'm curious.
Oh, goodness. Like. Goodness. This is supposed to be about me interviewing you tonight.
But it still fits in the context of what we're talking about, which is interesting. You know what I'm saying? It's a dialectic.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were going with dialectics tonight. I mean, all right. Which one do you want to hear, Bigfoot or the aliens?
Well, we'll save the aliens for when we cover aliens. How about let's do the Bigfoot one?
All right, Bigfoot. My friend, this was September of 2013. My friend had owned a piece of property that was like a mini ESETI ranch. A lot of my experiences happened there. And from that point, he wanted to take me back into the forest behind his property in order to see where he had a weird paranormal experience as a kid. And as we were walking along this trail, this deer trail, and walking into the back, we got about, 300 yards into the forest. We came across this tree, perfectly healthy tree, that was snapped at about 10 feet high. Oh, no, pardon me, 8 feet high. And I knew nothing of this. And I just kind of quipped in my extremely, 1 out of 10 amateur way. I said, Bigfoot is apparently able to snap trees. And we were looking all around, this tree, and the bark is still wet. There was no windstorms. There was no bug bites in the tree to make the tree weaker or anything like that. The bark was still fresh, and we kind of got this feeling like we were being watched. And we kind of stopped what we were doing. We started looking around, and about 100 feet north of us, there was this giant fir tree, and we could see something in the shadow, and it was peering out at us, then pulling back, and then peering out at us. You could see a shoulder, you could see the side of the head, then you could see the full head make out a little bit what looked like a face. And it was kind of weird. So I kind of said...
How far away was that
100 feet?
From you, would you say?
100 feet. And so as we were watching this thing, my friends also they were very spiritual people. They had a rule on their property too. No photographs. They wanted whatever was there to be comfortable with showing up, that it wasn't going to be used as a vanity project or a side project. So they were pretty strict on that. And so here we were standing, and we're about 5 minutes watching this thing kind of peer in and out from the tree. And then my buddy says to me, he goes, you know what? Let's leave it alone. We want it to come back. We don't want to scare it away. Let's just give it a wave, say thank you to the universe, and walk away. So that's what we did. So I start to turn down the trail, because I'm not like Zoolander. I couldn't figure out how to turn left. So I turned to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And at about 75, so if this guy, the first one was at, say, high noon on a watch, the second guy was at about 1:30 at about 75 feet. And I see this tree branch start shaking vigorously. And that's where I saw the second one at about 75 feet walk right through where that tree branch was shaking. And I got a full right side back profile on it. I didn't see the face. I saw the arm. I saw the hips. I saw the back. There was no neck. It went straight to the pointy head, and it was friggin' awesome. I yelled over at my buddy. I said, Dave, there's a second one, because his name's Dave too. And he turns and looks, and he goes, where? And I said, over there, and it was already gone. And he missed that one. But, yeah, no smell, no stinky stench that a lot of people talk about, but it was cool. It was very, very cool being that close.
Wow. Did it look like what we typically have seen, the idea of what Bigfoot looks like, or did it look any different?
It kind of walked a little hunched over, much like the Patterson-Gimlin film. I could not tell if it was male or female. I did not see an anus or like the butt line going down. I didn't see that. I didn't see the hands because the arms were kind of low, but it was kind of swaying. Like, it had no interest in even seeing me. Like, it was just like, yeah, I know you're there. But I honestly, now looking back on it, I think there was 3 of them there, because there was the one guy behind the tree. There was the second one that walked through, but something had to be shaking that branch to get its attention. So I to this day, I still think there was 3 of them there, but I saw 2.
Did its face kind of look like that kind of simian-looking face, or what did it kind of look like?
The one that we saw, it was so dark from the shadow that we could not really make out. Like, you could make out a little bit, but to get actual what it looked like, couldn't do it. And the second one, I never saw its face.
Wow. So it's pretty densely wooded there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Did you guys happen to go out and check out where it was standing to see if there was any kind of, like footprints or anything?
We went back once, and it was funny because way in the distance, like, we worked a lot with energy there, and way in the distance there was a tree that was swaying opposite of the way the other trees were swaying in the wind. And it was swinging back and forth in a weird direction. And we were kind of like, you know what? We're not wanted here right now. We have to leave. So we ended up leaving. And you have to understand, my friend at that time, they had everything happening there. They had UFOs, they had extraterrestrials, they had Bigfoot, they had ghosts, they had spirits, they had fairies, they had across the street, there was something really, really dark across the street in the forest portion there. It was a nasty, awesome place where there was a lot of activity. And they didn't want that to go away. They wanted to keep it for their own little studies. And so you had to abide by the rules, right? And that's kind of like, it wasn't just a free range. You had to abide by what they were putting down. And whatever we were doing at the time was working, because every time we went there, something was happening. So
it's really interesting. I mean, have you tried to go back since, because there's so much activity there?
No, they don't own. They don't own the property anymore. They sold the property a few years ago, but apparently the new owners are pretty cool and spiritual and zen, so they might. Paul, I'm going to get you to hold on. Nicole, you hold on as well, because we are going to go into hour number 2 here. Paul Leach, director, producer of the docu-series Proof. We're going to get into that with him and Nicole in hour number 2. Then in hour 3, we're going to talk about the latest happenings of the To the Stars Academy. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues. All right, guys, we're clear.
Cool. Give me 2 minutes.
Yep.
Be right back.
Nicole, you get to chat with the audience here. I'm just going to take my dog outside, okay?
I'll go for it. Watch out for those cats.
I will. I'm going to go try and find the cougar in my yard now.
What's up, YouTube? Can't believe this TTSA story breaking. All because our pal Dave here and his diligent investigative research, his connections. Danny Silva also did a brilliant breakdown of Lou Elizondo's interview on Mystery Wire. So if you guys want to get all caught up before Dave gives his rundown, check out Mystery Wire and the Silver Record. And of course, go to uapresearch.com. And that's where you'll find Dave's article. It's all over Spaced Out Radio, too. Guess I could mention Goof On. Dave was live on Goof On. The researcher into Mothman Prophecies was John Keel. I think I saw somebody ask me in the audience, by the way. Wrote the book, was a journalist, very influential ufologist. UFologist. I think I just said it how Goop on hates. Yes, Solar Warden. It was Richard Greer's character, loosely based.
Okay, I am back.
All back.
Are there any questions from the chat, maybe?
I answered them. They wanted to know who the researcher was that wrote the Mothman Prophecies book, and it was John Keel. Big time ufologist.
When we get to the UFO part, if we talk about that episode, I'd definitely like to hear about your high school experience with that. That'd be really interesting.
Okay, it might take a while to tell. I could give a rundown speed version of it, but on my YouTube channel, I talk about it in a couple interviews. I think my interview with Cameron Brower from My Alien Life podcast, that was a pretty good one. I've spoken about it here a couple times on Spaced Out Radio, but it wasn't very impressive. It wasn't taken on board a craft or anything, I don't think. I did have missing time. It was me and two of my friends. And I saw a green fireball, and it did what I always called it pops in and out. Like it was kind of directly west of me, and then it went in an instant, it went south and then back to its original position and then toward our vehicle. And when it came toward the vehicle is when I always called it a pause. I felt like there was a pause. And my friends remember seeing the light, but not the fireball that I saw. And I saw it and they didn't, because I was popped out through the sunroof of the car. And they were inside the car. And we noticed, and we had just left the movie theater. It was like 9:30 at night, and we were going to a party that was out in the country, and it was about 5 miles outside of town. And we had pulled over at a spot in the country. I think one of my friends that was with us had to go to the bathroom, so we kind of did one of those nature bathroom breaks. And that's when we were getting back in the car is when all of this happened. And we continued on to the party to find nobody there. And by then it was a little bit after 11 o'clock at night. So And that was even in, I think that was in one of your episodes, or the abduction episode. The skeptic kind of talked about his theory on missing time and explained it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I haven't experienced yet, is that missing time. I've had time slips happen. I just haven't seen the missing time. Trust Divine Mercy is asking, Dave, where did you see the stick man? That was about 2.5 miles from where I am. And, yeah, my son and I were out geocaching when I saw that guy. That was kind of cool.
What is geocaching?
It's a GPS scavenger hunt. Yeah.
Kind of like Pokemon hunting.
Yeah, it's kind of like Pokemon.
Don't know what that
yeah.
is.
Okay, hold on 1 second, guys. Here we
That
go.
told me nothing.
Hold on. Oh, we still got 30 seconds or 20 seconds. You go on geocaching.com, you download coordinates into a GPS, and then you go find what's hidden on the other side of the coordinates.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's like about 8 million of them hidden around the world.
Is it like a natural?
No, people place them. People
thing?
place them. Hold on, here we go. Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on KPNL, TalkStream Live, and Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us tonight, Clam? Crapulence. Crapulence is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we continue on with the docu-series Proof. Director, producer, Paul Leach is with us, along with his good friend, Nicole Sakach. Paul, Nicole, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
No problem. We're talking.
Thanks, listeners. Hope you guys. Go ahead.
We were talking geocaching during the break. Most of the audience didn't hear that. But yes, it is a scavenger hunt game where you plug in the coordinates. People go hide things. I've actually, around my house here, I've got like 5 of them hidden. And people, it's actually kind of cool because, one, I can stand out on my patio and watch people try and find it. When I see them, I'm like, oh, you're looking at the wrong spot. You know, I'll yell across the green belt at them. But yeah, I found over 1,300 of them. How many have I found?
What kind of stuff do people hide? Like, what is it? Give me an example.
You know what? They'll put they'll take like a Tupperware container, and they'll just put like dollar store trinkets in there. So it's not about what's in them.
It's like
it's not about what's in them. It's more about like what is just finding whatever is on the other side. That's what makes it really cool. Pardon me. I found like 12
satisfaction.
Yeah, I found 1,267. That's how many I've found.
Wow.
Yes.
Well,
so it's
Nicole,
it never quits.
This is really great because now I know what to do with my Christmas gifts I don't like. I can just bury them out.
That's what
somewhere.
I do. That's what I do.
And for people like, oh look, hey, here's an ugly tie. I wonder why that's out there.
Oh, why not? Why not? It's a perfect geocache present. Somebody will take it. Somebody always takes it. That's the beautiful part. That's a beautiful part. But let's continue on with your series Proof. It's a 12-part docu-series where can people find it?
So it's streaming now on Amazon Prime. It's free for Prime members. You just look under Proof and it'll come up.
So when you did this series, I want to ask you, because we talked a little bit about it the first half hour, but I want you to go into description. Are you a believer, or are you wanting to believe?
You know, it really depends on the episode because we cover so many different topics. I'm definitely more of a believer in some topics, and I'm definitely, like every topic, you have to go in open-minded. Like, I'm open-minded about every single topic. I'm like, hey, convince me. And so I think that our production team in general was very open-minded and actually wanted to believe in things, hoping that there actually would be enough proof to prove these things to be true.
Okay, so was there any part of these topics that you really struggled with? Because in the 12-part series, each series is about something a little bit different.
So that's a good question. I think, I'll say first that I think the ones that I think were easier to believe were maybe like some of the conspiracy theory ones, because a lot of those actually had a lot of evidence for, whether it's, for instance, the Denver airport conspiracy is very weird and very interesting. And, you know, secret societies, I think everyone actually believes that there is an Illuminati, but, you know, what do they do? The ones that were a little bit more difficult, which probably needed more proof, were things like the bigger things, like maybe like cryptids, like we want to believe, but we want to see more evidence of that. Things were also difficult were things that there weren't a lot of anything on, like EVP, electric voice phenomena. There just wasn't much to source anyways, but then, you know, plumbing into those things. Some of them were definitely a little bit more difficult to find. I wouldn't say more difficult to believe. I think I would more say more difficult to find evidence on. That was conclusive evidence of any type.
So for you, what is conclusive evidence? Because there's a lot of paranormal people out there who will, you know, produce an EVP of a voice of someone that wasn't there.
Yeah, you know, it has a lot to do with confirmation bias. And so for your listeners who don't know what confirmation bias is, it's when you want to believe something, so you start seeing or hearing things that may not be there, but you just, because you want it so bad, your mind just kind of fills in the blanks of those things. One of our skeptics, he's a professor at Chapman University, and he was talking about, like, what he does in one of his classes is he plays a record backwards. And he says, what do you hear in this record? And usually it's nothing. It's complete gibberish. But then the next class he'll be like, listen for these words in the record. Do you hear these words? And then they will play it backwards, and they're like, oh, yeah, I totally hear these words. So, for instance, in that episode, there were definitely some things that were just a big stretch. You're just like, I don't know. I mean, now that you tell me, I kind of can hear it. But there were also some ones that sounded a little bit more like it possibly could be if I didn't tell you that this was what you're hearing, that you might have actually heard it. Our expert on that, I think it was Ellie Arquette in this one, and she actually has a spirit box, and she actually tries to communicate with spirits that way. It's very interesting.
So
what is your, have you guys had any experience, you and Dave and Nikki, have you done anything like this with EVP?
I have.
I've listened.
Yeah, go ahead, Nikki.
I've listened to a lot, but it's like you just said, it's kind of that power of suggestion. I do find the cases more interesting when spirit box are in, or I know there's even some apps out there that you have to give it words to say, and it will build, you know, what it'll speak on based on the words that you input into the app. And I think those are more interesting than just, you know, the random, hey, do you hear this? This is what I heard. I also like to know the correlation in research, like when you directly ask questions and then you receive some sort of answer back. I think those are kind of more interesting to me than the just kind of out of nowhere, hey, I accidentally recorded this, it sounds like that, you know.
We actually did.
Yeah, and you know,
we actually did about 25 miles from my house. is a plane crash site where 52 people died back in 1965. And to this day, it's still known as Canada's biggest unsolved mass murder because there was a bomb on board that plane. Long story short, we did an EVP session out there with a gentleman named Bill Hauser, who's been on this show a number of times. And one of the things that we learned out of that was that when we sat down, we got a name. A name popped up, and when we cross-referenced that name at the crash site to the victims, it was a name that was on the list of those who passed away. Now, this is an area, like where I live, there's not a lot of radio signals. It's not like being near the city where you're picking up, you touch the dial half a centimeter, okay, and all of a sudden you're at a new station each time. It's not like that at all. I went real Canadian there with saying the centimeter, but it was very intriguing to actually get a name from a spirit voice, or what we think is a spirit voice, of a person who is actually on that plane crash. And none of us there knew any of the names. So when we cross-referenced it later when we were out for dinner and saw the name, I tell you, it gave all five of us that were there a real case of the goosebumps, that's for sure.
So I interviewed for the show, for that episode, something that didn't actually make it on air, which was I interviewed, I can't think of his name. I talked to him on Skype from Scotland, and he is actually the guy who the movie White Noise was based on as a scientist. And that movie with Michael Keaton came out called White Noise. It's actually based on him. And he talked to me and told me all these really interesting stories. And, for you guys out there who don't know anything about TV film production, like the reason why we weren't able to use him on the show is because Skype interviews don't work on TV and film. They need to have a certain resolution in order to be cleared for broadcast on TV. And so we would actually need to have a certain level of quality in the video in order to be included in the show. But, these are very interesting things because I think that, there's definitely a possibility of these things being real. Now, for me, an ongoing question that I have through this whole entire series, which is sort of more of a macro perspective on things, is me coming from TV and film, even from scripted TV and film, where, you write a script and you have all these characters and they have motivations. I always ask myself, why? And the why doesn't discredit the event actually occurring, but the why is asking, like, okay, why would they talk through this white noise? Why would there be this thing that occurred? Why, I always am trying to get the larger perspective. Okay, maybe this is real, but why? But why? What is the purpose behind it? And that's sort of the larger question that I always have tried to get at with the experts. And maybe some of you guys in the super chat or the chat have an answer to the whys. Like, why communicate through white noise? Why not just communicate audibly? Maybe you guys have an answer. And again, this doesn't discredit it being real. I just always have these questions like, why?
And I think even as experiencers, we have those same questions too, because, for many people out there, Paul, who've experienced, we don't know the why, and that's part of the entire mystery that keeps everybody going. Like when somebody gets abducted by aliens, or somebody has a close encounter with Sasquatch or a ghost, part of the issue is that the timeline that it happens on is so either skeptical because it happens in the middle of the night and you could be dreaming and just having a nightmare comparatively to, say, something that you see with your own eyes, and it's such a fleeting glimpse that you're not really sure how to calculate the why. And I think if you ask any experiencer out there about the why or how it's happening, they don't know. The only thing they could tell you is exactly what they went through in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think that, where I talked about womb theory and all this stuff, is I feel like there must be something bigger that we don't know. Like you said, there's something bigger that we're missing, that there's a connection or there's a larger macro narrative that we're not aware of, that if we were aware of it, or maybe some, rules of the supernatural somehow, that there's some governance somehow over these things that we're not really aware of, that they fit perfectly in accordance with whatever those rules of governance are, but we don't know what they are.
Many people who've had paranormal experiences tend to say that in communication with spirit, they've been told that the spirits aren't allowed to show themselves. It's against the rules. Apparently, and it's funny because, it reminds me of, do you remember, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the movie now, Beetlejuice, where there's the handbook, the post-death handbook that everybody gets. And apparently, some people believe that there is a handbook out there and that spirits are not supposed to show themselves. And if they do, they get upset or they could get in trouble. I know it sounds like a weird theory, but, the beautiful part about what we do with these fields, and I'm sure you found out in the people you interviewed, is the rule books that we would consider are really tossed out the window. Scientifically, it's tossed out the window with everything, chemistry, physics, you name it, because it doesn't make sense to the current idealisms that we have under science and those theories that have permeated from it.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is true, is that there has to be sort of a larger perspective that actually engulfs what we know of science or physics at this particular point. That maybe there's just a larger governance that science fits within, but doesn't fit within science, if that makes sense. Like our scientific methods fit within the larger perspective, but the problem is that we're trying to fit the larger perspective in the smaller worldview.
Could be. It could very well be. I mean, did you notice any patterns between any of the people you investigated, filmed, and researched about the occurrences that happened to them? Whether it was aliens, whether it was ghosts, or whether it was ESP or whatever.
Good question. They're largely very different. I know with shadow people, a lot of people have that sleep paralysis thing where they just feel like someone's sitting on their chest. That's pretty common across the board with a lot of people. I don't think there was necessarily something that stuck out about those people over others. The aliens is a different topic. Like, we can talk about that in a second if you want. But I'm trying to think if there are people who experience these things who are skeptical themselves before they experienced it, or if they were a soft audience for these things. And what's really tough about that is what I said before about confirmation bias. It doesn't just work with people who believe, it also works with people who are skeptical. So, for instance, somebody who's skeptical could have gone on your trip, Dave, and seen Bigfoot, but it just brushed it off because they don't want to believe in that.
Okay, so that brings up a good point. The BFRO is allegedly known by its members and investigators to throw out reports that have anything to do with what they would consider woo topics. So, for instance, people who see fairies or lights or orbs or UFOs or ghosts around their Bigfoot sighting, the BFRO is refusing to research them because, in their opinion, it taints the research of what is going on. It makes it less credible.
What is a woo topic?
UFOs, aliens.
A woo topic is UFOs and aliens? Okay.
Yeah, we call it woo.
So what they're saying...
High strangeness.
High strangeness, yeah.
So what they're trying to do is provide more credibility to the research. And I know Joe Rogan's a big wannabe believer in Bigfoot. Like, he doesn't know if it's there, but he's definitely sort of obsessed with trying to find Bigfoot at some point.
Yes, but here's the problem. When you hide behind the word science, okay, like a lot of researchers do, science is about proving or disproving theory. But if you are already eliminating a big portion of that theory because you do not believe in the existence of ghosts or UFOs while this is going on, and you're searching for Bigfoot per se, in this case, there's nothing scientific about what you were doing. You're conducting opinion. You're not conducting science.
Yeah, and I think that is probably one of the biggest things that I ran into doing this series is there's a lot of personal experience that people had, but there was very little empirical evidence. Like I was hoping there'd be much more than there was.
Yeah, and that's
I would love to see a lot more. I would love to see a lot more empirical evidence, especially, and I understand your description of like, hey, when I'm in the moment, like I'm all thumbs and it's hard to get my video camera out and do that stuff. Totally get that. I think that's very valid. And again, just so your listeners understand that in no way am I invalidating anything. I'm just saying that from a very objective point of view through doing this series, I have to admit I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't find more empirical evidence than I did. And then mostly it was firsthand accounts. And the problem with doing a TV show, as opposed to, let's say, doing a podcast or a radio show, hearing first-person accounts is really great to listen to. But when you're doing a TV show, it's such a visual medium that first-person accounts aren't enough. I need visual evidence included in those first-person accounts. So it creates a little bit of a quandary. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense in regards to that. But, I mean, you're also dealing with the unknown where even the top scientific experiments haven't been able to prove or disprove this. So does that mean that the science isn't working, or does it mean that we are not figuring out the science behind it?
Well, what's your opinion on that?
I don't think this... Well, I mean, I asked you the question first, but in my opinion, I would say the science isn't working.
Yeah.
And I might be in the minority there. I know that.
I think the science is lacking as well. And that's, that even goes back to tie it in with the show, like mind control and ESP experiments. And I know I always harken back to the research that Hal Puthoff did back in the day. And it was just so hard to even test people that could demonstrate these abilities. It was hard to be able to repeat the same test with people with these abilities. And it was frustrating for the scientists trying to study it. So I think as we push the envelope forward and these areas become less of a joking matter, like I'll mention Science Bob and Sky Hub and all the work that he's done and that team is doing with being able to gather this data. But that's the other thing I wanted to bring up, because you kind of said in a roundabout way that testimony often isn't enough. And we know that. And the biggest researchers in the field, like I'm thinking, we brought up Joe Rogan, Jacques Vallée on Joe Rogan's show just a few weeks ago. He really hammered home the point that all the data is important. Yes, a lot of us researchers are at a point where we're like, oh, so what? It's another sighting. Yes, these things are happening. Yes, it's real. Let's move past that and get to the real science. But the thing that Vallée pointed out was we need this data. And as much data as we can get from individual testimony or firsthand experiencers,
right,
the better. Because after we can accumulate data is when we can start to see the patterns.
Nicole, hold on right there because we do have to go to break here. Paul Leach, director, producer of Proof, continues with Nicole Sakach and myself right after this. Sorry to cut you off there, Nicole.
No, you're fine. I'm used to it.
I know. Yes. We're going to teach Nicole next on how to use a clock.
I need to put it directly in front. That goes to the equipment failure. I can't wear a wristwatch. They always crap out on me. I can't wear headphones. They always crap out on me. On my sky watches, kind of inevitable. If you take one camera is going to fail. If you take two, one will fail, the other one will work, and then it'll fail. If you take three, one out of the three.
And where did Nicole go? She's having problems tonight.
Three will do. With the data, or picture, getting a photo or video, though, sometimes these experiences are so profound, you don't think of it to grab your camera. That even happens to us who are prepared, that want to encounter these things and have all the equipment with us. The other factor with that we didn't touch on is the high strangeness factor of the phenomena being able to manipulate technology. It can shut off cameras. In the earliest abduction accounts, it, shut down entire vehicles, things like that. And experiencers still talk about those aspects of high strangeness. It's not like we made better cars that they can't turn off or things like that. Even in our military cases, where they were told to fire
nuclear weapons facilities.
Yep. Well, that's been a hot topic lately. Not that it's ever not a hot topic, but we could go on and on.
Yeah, and I mean, just so you know, it's I definitely think that there's some credibility in just first-person accounts and everything. I mean, I went through a lot of them. Just the problem is because the medium is TV. Like, there needs to be more for television specifically. There needs to be as much video or pictorial evidence as possible, which there was remarkably a lack of for most of the subjects. Which in that part was what was disappointing. There was tons of first-person accounts, and no way is that like negating any of those or saying that those are illegitimate or of any kind. It's just that it's a shame that there isn't more pictorial or video evidence of these topics, specifically in a visual medium like TV.
Mm-hmm. We discuss that often these days. With the abilities of CGI and camera phones and the ability to even create images and the deep fake state and things like that, like it's getting harder and harder and harder to have it come down to one case, or is it going to be the one picture? And it's not. It's never going to be the one case that breaks it open or the one Bigfoot sighting. It's going to be the accumulation of all of this data together, and then it can break open somehow. But
I mean, Nicole, you were saying that you think that your ufology, you said that you believe that it kind of does relate to cryptids somehow. I mean, where do you see the connection?
In the sightings happening together, like I said, with the Mothman investigations, there was also a UFO flap at the same time in Missouri with the orb flap that they were investigating and coming across or encountering Bigfoot. You hear these stories time and time and again, and maybe some better overlapping ones that I think more people need to be interested in are like in your miracles episode. I think it was episode 2 or 3. I think it opened with the couple that was receiving gemstones. They would wake up and there were gemstones littered throughout, their floor. They'd open a drawer and they'd find one, or they'd drive, to the store and there'd be gemstones in the parking lot. That phenomenon is called an apport phenomenon. And it's when
30 seconds.
And that crosses over into physical mediumship and ufology as well.
That's interesting. Yeah. With science, they say that, I think it's Newton's first law of thermodynamics, the one that says that matter cannot be created or destroyed or energy. It's not true in very slight amounts.
All right, guys, hold on 1 second here. Here we go. Past the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us. We really do appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out my free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with the docu-series Proof. Director and producer Paul Leach is here, along with his good friend Nicole Sakach, as we continue on with the conversation. Paul, Nicole, welcome back.
Yay, good to be back.
We're good to have you here. Good to have you here. Is Paul still with us?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
For everyone who's still listening. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. Paul, when it came down to the subject, this is one of the subjects that really, really connects with me a little bit, because I don't know why. I just have a big intrigue in it. When you were discussing things like mind control and ESP, I mean, things that really work with the mind, did you delve into deeply on Proof on how people are able to control their minds when the majority of our population really doesn't understand that?
Mind control is a very interesting topic. One of our guests, for you people who haven't seen the episodes, was one of the scientists in the MK Ultra project. He's somebody that I've worked with in the past, and he's actually the only scientist who's still alive. Go figure. All the rest have died naturally or unnaturally, so he's literally the last one who's left. So he was actually involved in that project. And if for any of you who don't know, I'm sure most of your listeners know, MK Ultra was the American government's attempt to create mind control as a response to the Soviets' mind control programs. What we found out is that there's kind of a difference between brainwashing and mind control. Like, you can brainwash someone, like you see something in the media a million times and you start believing it, or actual mind control where we actually try to bend you against your will. So what our guest was saying, I think we called him Q on the show, what he was saying was that in the MK Ultra project, what they found out, in order to quote unquote mind control or to brainwash somebody, what they had to do is they had to actually break down their consciousness first before they could rebuild it. So there was a destruction that had to occur before they could build in what they wanted. And that was the part that people died, and it was very difficult and harsh. That was where they took LSD and they did a whole bunch of other things. So it's a very sensitive topic. Maybe you could tell me, Dave, what your thoughts on the topic are yourself. Have you had any experience, or Nikki, you guys, either of you?
Nikki?
Ooh, well, you said the word, and I've been thinking for the last 20 minutes or so, my UFO boss, Grant Cameron's going to kick me in the butt if I don't bring up consciousness. And that ufology is definitely steering towards the consciousness angle of contact and how it relates to these other fields, and that the phenomenon is all consciousness and ways to break into your consciousness and connect to the field through various contact modalities. And I think one of the avenues we explore often is it comes up. It's like, well, how does consciousness relate to ufology? You know, lots of nuts and bolts researchers that still follow the extraterrestrial theory that these guys are visiting us from Alpha Centauri or another galaxy, and, you know, using that kind of technology to travel through the universe. Where if you follow the multidimensional hypothesis or the future human hypothesis, and these government programs, like you just mentioned, MK Ultra, you know, I mentioned Hal Puthoff before in his ESP work. And what do all these things have in common? And that is this conscious manipulation of some sorts. The phenomena can manipulate an individual to see things or perceive things differently. And we find that across the board. I think in the break I brought up from the Miracles episode, the gemstone apports. And that crosses over into physical mediumship, where, you know, seances are held and communication with spirit is made and gifts are given. You know, gemstones might appear, or various other objects. And I think that even crosses into Bigfoot stories that I've heard, where Bigfoot might give a gift, this gift exchange idea going on. And then I think of other experiencers like Chris Bledsoe. Doesn't he have marbles that appear, and then he can gift them to people, or they'll show up for people that come to visit him? It's strange, but it's when you're a multi-experiencer, these things start making sense. Like how I described my missing time pause also felt like my out-of-body experience. It's like there's that in-between place of it's the same, and it's hard to put into words. Other people can describe it more beautifully than I can.
Well, I think this kind of goes back to what we're talking about the possibility of womb theory. The idea that you have organs that are meant for when you're in the womb for the outside world, and that even now, if we're in another womb, we talked about, you know, that negative space. What are the organs? What are the things that we can't do, but that we actually have organs that are meant to be interacted with? And that maybe, whether it's mind control or ESP or, you know, seeing auras or whatever, that we actually have within us the quote unquote organs, maybe they're not physical, which are meant for all the world that we don't see to be interacted with. Dave, what do you think? Where's your interest in mind control come from? Are you trying to control somebody's mind?
I have interviewed MK Ultra. Yes, I have interviewed people with my lab experiences. I've interviewed people who believe they have had telepathic messages from Dogman, Bigfoot, ghosts, aliens, you name it. And the one thing that is consistent with it all is that the message was very, very real, even though they cannot prove it. Take, for instance, there have been multiple reports of hunters who have filed reports with Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and along with Dogman, who say they raised a rifle to this creature thinking that it was going, you know, for their own safety. And this creature had sent them telepathic messages basically saying, I wouldn't do that. Something really bad is going to happen if you pull that trigger. I mean, is that just fear that is coming out of the person, or is that true telepathy that is happening? I mean, minds work in strange and mysterious ways, and we don't know how they are doing it. We don't know how they are understanding it. And that's where it gets a little confusing, because if the U.S. government, with remote viewing, with MK Ultra, we know they have done tests on people and people's minds. We know they have gone down this road. What the actual results are, we don't know because it's tucked away somewhere top secret. It's funny, I was talking to Colonel John Alexander on the phone the other day regarding this, and I just bluntly asked him, I said, you know, in Apocalypse, I asked him, I said, in Apocalypse Now, was that you that was said to be one of the characters who was a real hero in Vietnam? And he goes, I don't know about Apocalypse Now. He goes, but I'm sure you're probably going to want to watch Men Who Stare at Goats if you haven't already. And believe it or not, that's a movie I haven't seen. And that was pretty much part of the program that John Alexander helped set up with the United States government on mind control. So, I mean, and remote viewing. So when you look at it, the facts are there, but some of these facts are so deep into the top secret realm, they'll never see the light of day. And it's too bad.
So MK Ultra actually still exists now. It's just called something else. My contact, who called Q, actually knows of a lot of stuff that's currently going on. I think I'm going to have lunch with him pretty soon after the whole COVID lockdown in LA lifts and everything. He's old now, but so that still exists. And what's very interesting about what you're talking about is that obviously as we talk about what we can sense from other people. So for instance, birds can sense electromagnetic waves, which is how they navigate. We don't do that. And bees and sharks can sense electrical fields. You know, that's how a bee knows if a flower has been pollinated or not, by changing the electrical field. I mean, have you ever asked yourself why a million bees don't pollinate the same flower 2 feet away from their hive? I mean, because they know it's been pollinated already. But we don't sense that. And, you know, our visual spectrum that we see is very small. There's colors that we don't see, ultraviolet, infrared, probably others. And our hearing spectrum is very small. And so the fact that we as humans, our sensory perception of what is actually out there is so limited, what you guys are talking about, I guess it would make sense that some of us, if we train ourselves to, can tap into all these, like there's all this other information around us. Like, I guess like if you think about radio waves in the air or internet waves in the air around us are all these invisible things that we don't see. But what if we could tap into some of the information superhighways that are going on, whether it's communication with each other, or like the example I used earlier with Nikki, if I said, hi, how you doing? She said, I'm fine. And I know her ankle's messed up or something. Maybe there's all this information happening around us that we can tap into somehow.
And that
absolutely
could very well be, Nick.
That's what I was agreeing with that. And I think that goes along this consciousness line of thought. And I guess I can never remember his name. Yeah, it's not coming to me. But there are some recent breakthrough studies in consciousness, and they basically talk about the building blocks of consciousness and how we may not recognize it in other things, you know, like a single cell amoeba. Would we say that it's a conscious being? Probably not, but it might have building blocks of consciousness. And so I know they're exploring those kinds of routes. And I guess maybe to wrap it up a little bit, you know, this goes to that right brain, left brain inhibitor that Grant and I talk about often on our programs and shows and with other experiencers. And a lot of times, even like with Dr. Lear, who was the doctor who was removing implants from people, you know, he was asked what's the common denominator with all these people that you've helped, you know, what would you say that is? And his common denominator was that all of these people that he helped and removed implants from were very right-brained, creative people. And so this brings to mind the left brain inhibitor. I think Grant calls it Mr. Stupid. You know, it's like the logical side of your brain that wants to have a definite answer or that wants to rationalize all of this. But this contact side comes from that creative side, the right side of your brain. A lot of people refer to it as the feminine side of your brain. And, you know, in the research I've done, I can't say that I've found contradictory evidence to that. You know, I mean, I'm doing a series now on ufology, art, and music. And I mean, these are some of the most wildly creative people that I have ever had the wonderful opportunity to talk to. And actually, Paul, one of the persons I just interviewed was on your show. And that was one of your witnesses to your alien abduction episode. And that was Steve Boucher. And Boucher, sorry. I read and
he had a very,
have this terrible accent. But Steve Boucher, he was an abductee.
We'll teach you how to speak English soon.
You see, Dave's in Canada where they speak French, and so like he's cringing every time he hears you say Boucher.
Oh yeah, total cringe, man.
What are you talking about?
Oh wow, wow,
boot.
Wow.
Well, to kind of circle back to what you're talking about, Dave, about like the effect of how do you where's the effect in terms of like mind control or implanting things in people's minds? You know, sort of adjacent to that is the idea that what you speak, we talk about this invisible world. I'll just say it's the invisible world, the world around us, the world outside the womb, the world that we exist in, that we don't maybe, know if it, we don't see it. But, there's been a lot of evidence in terms of scientific things that even your words have power, that you speak things out. It can affect the way plants grow. It can affect, what's that famous Japanese scientist had all those water crystals where he spoke words to it and the water crystals ended up differently. So I guess I would ask your audience, how would you live life differently if you knew that your words actually had a physical effect on people? There have been studies that people who have had parents who just said, you're a failure, you'll never make something of yourself, they end up being a failure and never making anything of themselves. It's almost like they've been cursed, like the words actually had a physical effect on these people. And I just wonder, in people in their own lives, how would you live differently if you knew that what you physically did, whether what you said or what you did, actually affected the invisible world, and then that affected the physical one as well?
Ooh, well, I'll answer for all the audience if I can.
Go for it.
Where I will say this plays into those of us in the field that are trying to get in, finger quotes, in the field. And this speaks to CE5 contact or HICE, human initiated contact initiative. I forget how that ends. Or even the Rama folks, it all comes down to, and this is new lingo for me. I've come a long way in a year from my nuts and bolts research to this, but we talk about raising our vibration. And as much as this, sounds like, oh, kumbaya, let's all get together and hold hands and the world's going to be perfect. It is a collective, and what you bring into the experience, is what you're going to get out of it. So if you're, like Paul, you just said, if you're raised your whole life, and told you're going to be nothing, you're probably going to be nothing. You got to break that cycle of maybe doubt that you have. And I talk about it with my own experience. I physically had a day where I was like, okay, I'm going all in with this. It's a leap of faith. I know I'm going to eat a lot of crow from the research stances I've taken in the past, but I'm going to do it. And that's when the phenomena changed for me. I I had always felt it was kind of around me or trying to interact, but the left brain rational side of me kept blowing it off or giving it excuses. So when I decided to go on this inner journey, concentrate on meditation practices and raising my vibration to be in a better state, that's when contact started happening for me that I couldn't necessarily blow off and deny or come up with a logical explanation for it. Like the apport phenomenon that I had, I completely scoffed at apports. And that's the gemstones. I keep coming back to it. I was a total denier that this could happen. I was like, they're being planted. These people are just nuts. And as soon as I
post-production team,
it's.
Oh, I just wanted to say. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was just going to say, when you talk about the gems, our post-production team in South Africa thought that was ridiculous. Every time we had a meeting on WhatsApp, they were scoffing at that whole thing. They thought that was the silliest thing in the world.
My UFO boss had researched extensively into apports, and right before I started collaborating with him, he had done a couple podcasts on his research, and one of his stories was feathers. And these feathers kept appearing to people, I guess, in his research bubble at the time, and it wouldn't be like a feather, oh, here's a bird, it just left a feather. It would be like these swarms of feathers, and then nothing would happen, and then the feathers would happen to somebody else. It's like everybody was getting a feather. And I just kept laughing at this. I was like, oh, whatever. Pigeons fly all over the place. Feathers blow around. Birds nest, all this stuff. And I was listening to this one day at work, and it was the next day at work. I'm inside a building in a kitchen, no less, because that's what I do. I cook. And I kept finding feathers. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. The back door had to be open. Something blew in, all this stuff. I'm still blowing it off. And then I reach in my breast pocket where chef coats have a breast pocket. And I reach in there, and what do I pull out? A feather. And it just completely changed my scope of what something was trying, like that trickster that we always talk about. It messes with you a little bit. But that was like my woo slap. And I started investigating apports. And actually, Paul, in California, I think there is the largest collection of apports in the United States at a university, I want to say Stanford. Right. And the second biggest collection is in Manitoba, Canada.
Manitoba, yes. We don't have to say Canada.
I do in the States.
Well,
everybody will, where's Manitoba? Is that next to St. Louis?
That'd be like me saying St. Louis, America.
Yep. Sorry.
St. Louis, America, Los Angeles, America. We only have about 40 seconds here before we have to say goodnight to you two. Paul, I want to say thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio on Nicole's recommendation. I had a lot of fun with you tonight, man. And do us a favor, tell everybody in our audience once again where we can find your docu-series Proof.
Absolutely. It is on Amazon Prime. Just look under Proof. It's free for Prime members. You don't have to pay anything. And thank you very much, Dave, and thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Spaced Out Radio Group. Thank you for listening. Hope you weren't bored.
I don't think they were. Nicole, thank you so much as well.
Dave, it's always a pleasure to come on your show. And Paul, it's so wonderful being able to catch up with you and chit chat. And I think we'll be talking more now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell Natalie I'm sorry.
All right, we're going to move on here. Thank you, Nicole Sakach, Paul Leach, for coming on Spaced Out Radio. Coming up next, the next hour, yes, is going to be a good one. We're going to break down what happened with the To the Stars Academy and what could be their potential future next on the Mighty SOR. Good job, everyone.
Yay.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Nikki.
No problem.
Paul, it was a great first time on.
Yeah, you did well. Did well. We'll clap for you. There you go.
Hey,
We
well,
only
thanks for the
covered half
opportunity, guys.
the-
Huh? What?
I said we only covered half the episodes.
Yeah, there were some interesting things that happened that didn't make the episodes. There's one in the demon possession episode that was very interesting in our interview and stuff. But anyways, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks for
Thank you.
the time.
Paul, is there going to be a season 2?
I don't know. That's a good question. I guess we'll figure that out. Not
Well,
sure
you'll
yet.
have to post it. We could give you lots of ideas.
All right. Yeah, we'll help you out with that. We'll help you out with that, my friend. Paul, gotta let you go.
That.
Nicole, I'm gonna
Take care, guys.
Yeah, take care, Paul.
Bye, Paul.
Nicole,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask, did you want to stick around for this next hour, or did you want to say goodnight? It's up to you.
I was hoping you'd let me hang out just because this is such awesome breaking news that
then you can hang out with me. I'll be right back. I'll be right back though, okay?
Yeah, me too. I got to let my dog out.
All right. Here we go. We'll be right back.
Hello, Space Travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. And follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye!
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Paul, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get from Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make us think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I make. Be sure to keep on listening because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, Space Travelers, this is John Russell. You know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little different. We're not some fake our goal is always to then you give those items to friends and $100 to go. To become a donor to Space Travelers, it's a charity. By charity.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at MightyMooseBeard.com today.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Stacy, the Spiritual Support Association, otherwise known as PESA. We're glad to team up with Space Air Radio to help investigate your experiences.
All right, I'm back. Hold on, let me put my headphones
Me too.
Let me put my headphones on here.
Can I tell you how awesome your article is?
No.
I read it like 3 times already.
My goodness. My goodness. I'll sign you an autographed copy. How about that?
Woohoo!
I'm going to, actually, I'll say this when we get back on air. Got about 90 seconds. Yeah, tonight Jupiter and Saturn are supposed to form the conjunction. I can't even see it because of the damn clouds. Now the wind is picked up. It's terrible outside right now. Terrible. So I'm going through this phase right now. Like, I'm trying to eat healthier, and I'm always hungry now. Like, around this, up until like 2-3 weeks ago, I was never hungry at this time of night. Never. And now, doesn't matter what I eat, I am just starving at this time of night.
That's a side effect of eating healthy. Better stick a carrot in it. Or, I don't know, you can always switch over and start eating breakfast in the middle of the night.
No. I have enough in reserves where my body can feed off itself for about 4 years. I'd still be over 200 pounds by the time it was over.
You want my chef explanation for this side effect?
Sure.
It's because all that, air quotes, unhealthy food you eat, it's like your body's missing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
So it's the starches are like, give me some starches. You know.
Damn you,
that's why
chefs.
Hold
on. I'm cutting you off right there because we're about to go on air. Hold on. Again.
Would you like to connect with us? For all of your latest show info. Back to Dave Scott.
Third and final hour is underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. I really do enjoy you all tuning on in. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on KPNL, TalkStream Live, and Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Crapulence. Crapulence is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight, something a little bit different. Now, normally we have our guests stay for the first half hour of the hour number 3. But tonight, because of the breaking news that kind of happened starting last night with George Knapp and Luis Elizondo continuing on today, we figured we'd take some time here to kind of go over some events that happened with the To the Stars Academy. And Nicole, I'm going to bring you back in here because you are research assistant for Grant Cameron and very well respected in the field of ufology. And, you know, when you heard the news that members of the TTSA, very big name members, Chris Mellon, Luis Elizondo, and Steve, I'm forgetting his name now. Why am I missing this? Oh my goodness. Steve Justice resigned from the To the Stars Academy. What was your thoughts?
Honestly, my first thoughts were, it's only about a year after Ron Pandolfi predicted that it would fold. So that was my initial thoughts. And my second thoughts were kind of what you covered in your article, that it's really not going to be the end of TTSA, but what is it going to morph into?
Right.
So, yep.
So
those were my initials.
So for people who haven't read the article yet, you could go to spacedoutradio.com or uapresearch.com to check it on out. And I have been working on this story for a couple of months. I was tipped off to it by someone very close within the intelligence community. I have a couple people that I really rely on information on, and they told me that all was not well within the To the Stars Academy. Now, as many of you know who've listened to this show for a long time, I have always said to our audience, and I continue to say so, is beware of people who just show up with a bunch of information waving the disclosure flag. It really is something that we have all tried to pursue in this field in order to try and bring certain aspects of disclosure to the field. And I have always maintained that the To the Stars Academy, although they have brilliant people, there was a lot of unanswered questions that they were able to dodge, whether it was, in my opinion, controlling the media narrative regarding UFOs, or whether it was not being as upfront as I really hoped. And for me, the first red flag that I ever had with the To the Stars Academy was when they held a pressless press conference to announce their team. And I found that very weird, because we later found out the press conference was in Seattle. Well, me living in British Columbia, Seattle's not that far. I would have driven down for it. Many other media members from, anywhere from California straight up to British Columbia would have driven to that, because this was big news. This was very big news that Tom DeLonge and his dream team of UFO researchers were coming together to try and bring disclosure to the world, to change the world as we know it regarding the field of UFOs. The other thing that I found very interesting about it right off the bat was the fact that the To the Stars Academy specifically did not include any members of current ufology. I would have sworn that they would have chosen somebody like Richard Dolan, the late Stanton Friedman, who was still alive at that point. Maybe somebody who like Grant Cameron or Linda Moulton Howe, or somebody of those lines who is synonymous with this topic. And they shied right away from anybody who was in the field of ufology. They were the anti-UFO UFO group. Now, granted, they had a lot of big-name players, a lot of players who had former ties to Robert Bigelow's groups of NIDS, which was the National Institute of Discovery Science, and the Bass Corporation, which was Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Systems. And to me, that team was just made up of, lack of a better term, Bigelow cronies, outside of Luis Elizondo, who we later found out actually did work at Skinwalker Ranch as well. Now, this isn't criticizing the team that DeLonge put together. Not at all. Not at all. But there was a lot of red flags that came with that. And what I remember saying to our audience right off the bat, I said, you know what? Just sit back and let's relax a little bit and let's see how this plays out. Let's be careful here. Let's remember that these gentlemen who are involved with the To the Stars Academy all have alphabet agencies on their resumes, whether it's the CIA, the NSA, the NRO, whatever it may be. They all have alphabet agencies, which means that they were literally, their job was to basically deny all of this.
Right.
For years, to deny it right under the public's noses. And now they're supposed to be our best friends and have everything that was supposed to, have every part of the public be under their watchful eyes, that they were going to now do the public good after years. And I'm not saying these gentlemen in particular, but the groups that they were associated with, at placing disinfo, at ruining some people's lives.
Or at the very least, just not being transparent.
Now, we do also have to admit that over this time, the To the Stars Academy did some great work. They brought out the 3 videos. Okay? They took this subject from a fringe media and made it mainstream. They had millions upon millions of people watching this on news outlets, on different newspapers and television shows, radio programs. outside of this one and many others. Okay? And they did good work. They got rid of the Twilight Zone music, the X-Files music, the stupid puns that reporters and journalists would make on this subject. They got rid of that. But things have changed. I found out about this story a couple of months ago, as I stated. And I started digging. I started slowly asking some questions. The reason why is when you're tipped off to something as a journalist, you don't want to come out dashing and being very loud about it because you don't know who may have the scoop and who doesn't. Now, obviously, because George Knapp, who is a legend in my mind, a hero of mine in this field, is very tied to the people surrounding this story, I assumed right then and there he would have it, that he would be one. So my mind started creating, what can I do to outscoop George Knapp? Little did I know that I couldn't, because he broke it, but that's okay. That's okay. So I started asking a bunch of questions to sources, some known, some not, including Science Bob McGuire. That's one name I'll give up. And I started slowly asking questions to people in the know, or potentially in the know. And when I got on to the fact that there was a bunch of people out there who were hearing the same rumblings that I was, that all is not good in the To the Stars Academy, that's when I started pumping it up. Started going to my sources saying, look, I need to know that I'm working on this article. I want this story, and I need to know, is this falling apart? And some of those sources who are close to the scene said, I'm not here to say yes or no, but you're on the right track. Now, for me as a journalist, I know what that means. I totally know what that means. That's like, keep going, keep pressing, go for it. I'm not giving you anything else, but you're heading in the right direction. And so that's where the ball started going. And we were able to put out the story today on spacedoutradio.com and on uapresearch.com, which is the To the Stars Academy on the verge of collapse? Is it the end of the TTSA as we know it, or is it? Right? So over the years, when you start putting other things together, you start forming patterns, deep patterns. For instance, after Tom DeLonge went on the Joe Rogan Experience, he mysteriously disappeared from social media for a while. Then you find out from sources close that the rest of the TTSA board of directors, that he's the CEO of the company, were not happy with his performance. When you talk about whipping out your private parts, that doesn't go well with certain members who are used to government ways and government type language. When you show fake UFO videos, when you talk about a threat narrative that nobody knows and you're scaring people, that really put a bad taste in many people's mouths about that. Right?
Yeah, that really did. And I can say, just even from the social media aspect of all of it, Tom DeLonge, well, you mentioned the Rogan interview, and then the Rogan interview has disappeared. And over the years, Tom has dropped these quasi-cryptic posts across social media, only for him to be redacted or deleted, within an hour. And,
exactly.
There's people that would screenshot and still have them saved to this day, and, have more questions than they do answers about those things. And the other thing I know from the inception of TTSA, it's been confusing for people. They don't exactly know what TTSA is. Is it an entertainment company? Are they researching UFOs? Are they getting into like the technical side of, what was just out a few months ago where they were going to possibly build a spacecraft? Yeah, I mean, they've kind of put a bunch of irons in the fire, I guess. And it seems like after the little bit that they did well, like releasing the videos, it was always what's going to be next. And
Exactly.
nothing ever seemed to pan out. And I know from the onset, we heard about this financial difficulty that they've had. I've pretty much heard for the last 3 years that they're bankrupt. So I found your quote from Tom very interesting in your article.
Yeah, and that is from when I wrote the article today. The one thing that I really wanted to try and do is bring balance to it. I had quotes from Rich Giordano from Goof On as somebody who was extremely skeptical of the motives of the To the Stars Academy. I brought in Joe Mergia, who is a Las Vegas-based researcher, former guest on this show, who was flying the pro-TTSA flag. All right. And he even talked about how he invested $200 in their stock offering without any expectations of ever getting it back. He just wanted to be a part of the process. Richard Dolan, who we had on with Science Bob and Friends a couple of weeks ago, came in. And if you listen to the back end of that podcast, I asked him about this exact question about the To the Stars Academy, because these were the rumblings that I had heard, and I wanted something on the record, not knowing if I could get Richard on the phone to talk with him again. So that's how we got that quote. Now, I want to say thank you to Danny Silva of the Silva Record for transcribing what Elizondo said on the other late night show last night with George Knapp. And this is what Elizondo said. I'm going to read it word for word here. He said, "Well, I can't speak for TTSA. You have to go through TTSA channels to ask them about TTSA. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, I love my friends at TTSA. They are incredible human beings, but I also have to say my mission has always been clear, George, and that was to pursue or push disclosure forward. That's it. I think after 3 years, I can look back and I think we've achieved much of what we set out to do. TTSA, it's no secret, also focuses on the entertainment division. And, let's face it, guys like Chris Mellon and Steve Justice and myself, we're not entertainers. We're not. So very much like the History Channel project, we have accomplished our mission success. We have done more in 3 years collectively than anybody, I think, really expected us to achieve. Now it's time, I think, we shift from, it's like a car, right? I speak in car talk. I'm kind of a gearhead. So I think the time has come for the proverbial first gear to now go to second gear. We have enough momentum, enough inertia where we can shift gears and continue moving forward. And to do that with guys like me are looking at new and exciting ways to expand that conversation to an even larger audience while still staying true to our core of missions of disclosure. Now, there is also rumor out there that Chris Mellon, who is a former deputy director of intelligence, may be heading back to Washington, D.C. to help Joe Biden's staff when President-elect is finally formally brought into power on January 20th. And there's still some things up in the air about that, but I'm not going to go down the political road. All right. But Mellon has done a lot. He was the one who was in the conversations with Senators Mark Warren and Marco Rubio at the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he helped Rubio to go for funding from the U.S. government to put funding into UAP research with the formation of the UAP Task Force. And like we said, we talked to Tom Whitmore regarding this. And Tom, if you don't know who Tom is, he's a board member of MUFON, but he's also a retired financial analyst for a $250 million company in Texas. And Tom had a very, very interesting part in talking about this, which was that, from the SEC filings recently, the business has been running account deficits since 2015 up to the present, cumulatively totaling over $5 million after stock compensation backed out. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to be losing on this project. Now, Tom DeLonge has made, according to the internet, we all know the internet can be wrong at times, but if you believe the numbers, he's made almost $50 million over his career. That's not including his other businesses. That's just off his music. Could he afford to fund it? Sure. Could Chris Mellon afford to fund it? Sure. Mellon comes from the billionaire Mellon family. They could all afford to run it. That wasn't a real issue. Right? So what was happening? And what is behind the scenes? That's what we don't know. Now, word is, many of them are not happy with DeLonge himself. The rock star is very much focused on entertainment. He's also been very focused on the negative aspects of the threat narrative. And he's been uncontrollable on social media when it comes to the entire topic. And that, for many in the group, maybe, and I'm saying this without knowledge, but maybe that was the reason why, or one of the reasons why, many felt it was time to go. Because when you're dealing with people on that level, there is a sense of professionalism. And Science Bob McGuire, and for people who may not know Bob that well, Bob's a pretty intelligent guy. Bob's a very intelligent guy. Highly credentialed. Okay, he's a retired chief scientist of the Hume Center for National Security and Technology at Virginia Tech University. All right, this is a guy who literally was training scientists to be spooks. And he said, I believe that the TTSA was going nowhere with Tom DeLonge since he revealed General McCaslin's name in an email to John Podesta, and WikiLeaks got it and published it. The only part that might survive is the entertainment division. Well, when you look up who General McCaslin is, this is somebody who was part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under two presidents, and also pretty much had the keys to the Special Access Program Committee. So basically, he had the keys to the Wu files. And when his name got out regarding that, that's where a lot of people in the intelligence community started looking back, saying, well, what the heck is going on here? What is going on? And that was difficult. That was difficult for a lot of them to put up with. Now, WikiLeaks, let's be honest, is not Tom DeLonge's fault. It's not his fault whatsoever. You could blame Julian Assange for that. And wherever he gets his information. Whether it's from insiders, whether it's from the Russians, who knows? Who knows? But wherever he gets it from, that's where there was issues. So now, according to Silver Record, Danny Silva, and Mystery Wire, which is owned by George Knapp, Elizondo, Mellon, and Justice have resigned from the To the Stars Academy. This leaves a lot of different players still part of it, but we don't know how many more are going to be a part of this exodus. These are when you lose your two big stars, it's like the Lakers losing both Shaq and Kobe in 1 year, or both of them deciding, hey, we're out of here. Hey, we're out of here. That's what it's like. That's the power of what it's like. And I don't know how the To the Stars Academy, which is a company, can really survive in the UFO field without those two. But we'll talk more about that when we get back. Nicole Sakach sitting with me here on Spaced Out Radio as we continue our conversation about the To the Stars Academy. It's the end of the road, or the end of the TTSA as we know it, or is it? It's a big story out today in the UFO field. Affects everybody who's had a sighting, has interest, or has been taken. We'll talk more about this coming up in the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, we're clear.
Clear. It really is, mind reeling as what's going to happen next.
Oh.
That is,
yeah.
We're all going to be following it.
Michael Boyle with the quote of the night. Survive in the UFO field. There are cockroaches that survive here. That is awesome. That is just awesome.
It'll be like a butterfly metamorphosis,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess before we go any further, I guess this is a good time of the night to put on my Mighty Moose beard oil. Show people how it works. MightyMooseBeard.com, sponsor of our show. You get this beard oil, paying Canadian dollars. Just throw a little dab there, a couple of drops there. It also works good, ladies, for your hair, so it keeps the split ends away. Rub your
I
fingers
was just going to ask if I could use it to straighten out my curly leg hair.
Ew! Come on, we're live on YouTube. We don't need that picture. Look at that photo I'm using you. You look so beautiful and innocent, and now you're discussing leg hair. It's terrible.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sasquatch leg hair.
Mighty Moose. MightyMooseBeard&LegHair.com. No, MightyMooseBeard.com. Canadian company, all natural. There's nothing fake about this. Gary the Dutchman puts together a fine product. Use your promo code SOR 2019. Gary's going to give you a deal. And remember, if you're in the United States, you are paying in Canadian dollars, not American. So for like $20, it costs you like $15 or $16. That's it. That's it. MightyMooseBeard.com. And you smell good. And, Michael Boyle wants to see your leg hair, by the way.
You can send him a picture, Dave.
Ew, I don't have a photo of that. I deleted that. So
didn't I announce that until all you guys shave off these beards and I could see a face, that I'm letting my leg hair grow? My COVID leg hair.
Now, I got to tell you, my dad, I was FaceTiming with my dad yesterday, and my dad's a workaholic, and he's 71 years old, but he refuses to quit his job, right? So I said to him, he goes, when are you going to shave and cut your hair? I said, when are you going to quit your job? He goes, never. I said, then I guess we got a deal. Yeah.
I just miss seeing faces, and now, it was beards for a long time, and now it's beards and masks and, yeah. It's like, what happened to all the guys' faces?
Rafaela Hans, welcome to Spaced Out Radio. I see you're just passing through. Can't stay long, but we're here every Monday through Friday night. Come join us sometimes. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Oh, Surf Jer, I want a picture of your beard. And if you ever shave it, I want it for the studio. Send it to me. Yeah.
Got a good crowd tonight.
It is good. 137 people sitting on through here.
Woo.
It's cool. It's cool. Hi, gorgeous Teresa. Let's see here. We have just over 1 minute here. About 90 seconds. Oh my goodness, Miss Pickles. That's terrible. Could the Mighty Moose condition other hair? Wow. Wow.
It's all natural. Yep. I'm going to say yep.
Probably. I just haven't gone there yet. I just don't feel I need to go there.
Does Mighty Moose Oil have products just for women? That would probably be the way to.
You know what? I'm gonna hit up Gary for that. Gary the Dutchman, if you're listening. All right, you need a women's line. Honestly, you need a women's line. Spookles the cat. It's only fair at this point when Nicole shaves, she should send it to you. Okay, Nicole.
I'm on.
When you shave the leg hair, when you become Sasquatchless, all right, you put that in a Ziploc and you send that to SOR Studios. We will show the listeners.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
It does.
You know the pottery that you could grow chia pets out of,
Yeah.
or you could do like a chia whatever. That's what I'm envisioning right now. I'm gonna glue all my leg hair to a chia pet.
It's terrible.
Send it
terrible.
to SOR.
Hello, Tommy Lee, Ireland. Thank you, Dirty Filth, Alaska's greatest athlete, and Grendel for the super chats tonight. Remember, a good way to support this show is to go to facebook.com/the SOR Vault. Grab yourself some swag, hit that subscribe button, and here we go. Third, we're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate the time. Want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We're continuing on with our topic tonight in Hour 3, because if you haven't heard, it looks like the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, well, they took a big blow with 3 of their members quitting the TTSA in Chris Mellon, Luis Elizondo, and Steve Justice. Very, very tough time for Tom DeLonge and his crew. Now, the big question is, as we are joined by Nicole Sakach as well, is will this company survive? And Nicole, your thoughts?
I'm tending to base my thoughts off of what Lou said and on Mystery Wire, that, I think they will continue on in more of that entertainment side or publishing side, because, we mentioned, I said before, what have they put out since the videos? And, I can't say that they haven't, because they have supported some projects in the entertainment line and the publishing side of things. But, I think that's all kind of centered around avenues of research that Mr. DeLonge is interested in. What was the book? Secret Machines?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And here's the thing. The company has been around even before it became a UFO company. To the Stars, To the Stars was basically since, I believe, 2015 or so. And the one thing about it that I do know is this. There are many people who are in part of TTSA that have not come around or been public yet. If he wants to stay in the UFO community, losing his 2 big guns is very, very difficult to retract that or to build off of that. So the question then becomes, does he end up being a supporter of more of the arts and television side of everything, or does he continue down the road of UFOs? And if so, who steps up to the plate in order to now become the face of the franchise, so to speak? Because that would be something that they are going to desperately need after losing Elizondo and Mellon. And look, we don't know if there is bad blood or bad feelings. I don't think these gentlemen in their positions are going to come out and say, we quit because of Tom. I don't think that is something we will ever see in public. It may eventually leak out, but I don't think that's something that will ever come out if that is the case. And in a way, the TTSA self-destructing, I think in a way, many in the field of ufology didn't hope it would happen, but expected it to happen. Anytime people have, and let's face it, let's give them credit. they have pushed the field of ufology further than anybody has in the last 30, 40 years. They really have. And that is to a good credit. But we also need to know, too, that there is a business side, an intelligence side, a governmental side, many different fingers on these TTSA hands that we don't even know where they're going to. We don't know what they're up to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough purpose. You know what I'm saying? Some people will claim that it's all worth it, even if Tom shuts the door on it. Some people will say it's all worth it. Others will say, oh, I knew it was a cash grab or whatever all along. Nicole.
Yeah, I think some will, scoff and say, oh, this is why I didn't pay attention to him, in and out, but I'll cite, and it makes me giggle to the cockroach comment in the YouTube chat earlier. It's even like APRO, we still bring up and discuss APRO today, even though it's not in existence. I think we will still talk about TTSA, over the next decades to come, if it disappears entirely. Now, I think it's dangerous ground, to go from being something this monumental, for lack of a better word, where do you really take it from here? Is that the issue that, we know Mellon got the Nimitz videos and the other videos out to TTSA. And we also know that that was kind of a fluke, they were gotten out legally, but that venue of getting information out in the same way, that door is closed. That's not going to happen again. So we also know that, or we suppose that there is kind of infighting on the government side of disclosure. People like Lou have come forward and said that, that yes, there are factions that want the info out, and yes, there are factions that don't want info out. So it almost makes me wonder that if they are now stonewalled just entirely, like they know they're not going to be able to put forth anything to put into TTSA. And this comes back to the money issue again. If they're already millions in debt, it makes me wonder, even like with the UAPTF task force funding, we all know it's at risk right now and may not happen. And we know the TTSA is funded through the Army. A lot of their research is funded, they partnered with them. So it makes me wonder if funds are getting pulled from the government side of TTSA, not just, their business structure. So we'll definitely have to follow these issues.
Well, I think you said a very key word, stonewalled. Okay, they were only able to get 3 videos out before they were able to what's the word I'm looking for? Before the Navy was able to shut that down. Okay,
right.
They were only able to get 3 videos out. And if the public doesn't know how they got it out, we could say that here. When Luis Elizondo was running ATIP before he resigned to join the To the Stars Academy, the 3 videos, it's almost like there was a checklist. And some people who hear this who are much not better knowledge of mine may say, well, Dave, you got this wrong. But this is just my understanding of it, the Coles Notes version. Okay, there was like a checklist on each video that needed to be put out. And there was a box for UAP, there was a box for drone, and there was a box for something else more natural, whether it's airplanes, whether it's birds, or what have you. Okay? And with those 3 videos, Elizondo had signed off as drone. And that's how they were able to get them out. Because if they were marked as UAP, they would have not been able to be released to the public. So they had to be marked as drone. As soon as it's marked as drone, that public can be for public consumption. And that's how they were able to get the videos out. And when the Navy found out about this, from what I heard from sources, is that both Mellon and Elizondo were threatened by their seniority or senior officers to either stop what you're doing and trying to get more videos, or we're going to take your top secret clearance away and goodbye to ever seeing the toys and the goodies that the U.S. government has any further. So that's how the videos were able to come out. That's why they weren't able to produce any more videos, in my opinion, because they'd already burnt that bridge for the benefit of the public.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so when a lot of people, like myself included, were getting frustrated, like, give us more, give us more. The idea is they couldn't. They couldn't. Because the Navy wasn't having any more. This is when Mark Warner called the Navy in and said, you know, we want to see more. And the U.S. Navy literally told Warner after the first meeting, yeah, we're done. We're not giving you any more. We're not giving you any more. You don't need to know anymore. And these are elected officials being told this by the military. Well, I don't know how it works in the United States, but I know in Canada here or other countries, if you tell an elected official that they're not allowed to see something or ask questions, that's a little troublesome. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I agree. And I'm sorry, I was kind of lost in my thoughts. It was bringing to mind what Harry Reid has said on record, you know, that what we've seen and what has come out, you know, is nothing compared to what they have actually collected and what they have. And I think a lot of the problem, arises from keeping top secret information top secret. And it might not necessarily be the sighting, but it might be the location or where the video was actually taken or with what top secret equipment it was even taken with. And so I know that there was a lot of bases covered with what was released. But and Grant has pictures of these, you know, and has the picture of the envelope that the discs were in. And when you look at this picture, there's 6 or 9 discs. And so just based off the discs that are out, that we're able to get out, and we have we've seen minutes of each, you know, Go Fast Gimbal and what was the other?
Tic-tac.
What was the third? Tic Tac. There we go. You know, I mean, I don't know. I kind of assume that everybody knows how much data can be stored on a CD, you know, just based on, you know, loading music or making your own movies or whatever. Discs hold a lot of information. So after all these filters of covering, you know, secret this or where we were for this location, top secret everything, I just find it hard to believe that the small amount of those videos is the only thing we could see. And I was hoping that more would come out from those videos, you know, an extended version of, I know we talked about, or earlier on Goof On, you guys were talking about the gimbal. And that one always stuck out to me because you hear the guys in the video referencing other craft that are outside the field of view, that it wasn't just that gimbal craft in the middle, you know, that we've all seen, that it was kind of even a different shape or a different ship than what else was being spotted at the same time. I think one of them even said, oh my God, there's a whole fleet. Look, there's a whole fleet, you know, something along those lines. So I know that the door is closed on getting information out again in that same fashion, but I still think there's more in their hands that is out that we haven't seen, that we probably could see. But for some reason, it's, you know, like that ace up somebody's sleeve. They're holding it, you know?
Right.
So,
but that's where it's going to become a little bit more difficult for the field of ufology now to get information out. There's all of these sources that are talking. There's all of these people who are trying to get the message out from Washington, D.C. on out. The question is, are they going to be able to? And this is where constructive journalism, some like articles like Tim McMillan from The Debrief, who is, I think, an amazing writer on this subject, very highly connected. There's, other writers out there, from Brian Bender to Tyler Rogaway and many others out there who are going to continue to push the foot to the gas pedal. And one of the things that I'm hoping with both Elizondo and Mellon, and maybe even Steve Justice, who didn't give many interviews, but I'm hoping that they are going to open up a little bit more, and instead of dodging media requests like they were previously and only going on certain shows or programs that seem to be to the Stars Academy, I hope that they actually take a chance to go on some great other shows out there so they can actually get some quality questions rather than butt kissing that they were getting before, because there's a lot of pertinent questions that need to be asked. And I'm going to be writing an article. I'm hoping to get it out tomorrow. If not, it'll be in the next couple of days, but I'm hoping to get it out very soon. And it's going to be an op-ed piece, and it'll be on my site at spacedoutradio.com as well as uapresearch.com about why or some of the red flags that I saw with TTSA over the last 3 years. And hey, I will be the first one to say, I will give credit where credit is due. They did a lot of good work. They did a lot of good work. And that's from Tom DeLonge all the way down. But in the end, what we do see happening is we do see a group that is fractured. We don't know how it's going to have been. And maybe if they would have, accepted being part of the UFO field, how much more support would they have had? How much more support would they have received? All right.
I think it would have been folds, just folds more of support. I think they kind of cut themselves off at the knee, like you said, with their inception. Yeah, they have all these government powerhouses, and they had Tom DeLonge, who had the name and the celebrity and the interest to go behind it. But, where was the community represented at? There wasn't Richard Dolan. There wasn't Stanton Friedman. There wasn't a Grant Cameron. And I think that's where they sold themselves short. And I think that's where this kind of turmoil, could have been helped. I think Lou kind of alluded on Mystery Wire, that mission accomplished. They did what they set out to do with Unidentified and TTSA, and that was successful. So, to me, I was hoping he would give us a little more by saying, like we hear Grant say, or Valet even say, so what? It's another sighting. We know these things are here. Now let's get to the good stuff. I was hoping to hear Lou say he's ready to dive into that good stuff. That we know these things are here. Now let's get to the bigger picture. Well, but he didn't quite make that leap.
Well, let's hope that Tom DeLonge has a few more, aces up his sleeves where he could maybe pull a Jacques Vallée to become the face of the TTSA.
There's others still lurking around, like Jim Semivan. Our pal Melinda Leslie has a good working relationship with him and keeping in touch. And he has kind of reiterated to her several times that in light of the UAPTF, with this issue being pushed, that they're not going to back down, that they're going to keep pushing it until it gets into the political dogfight, that is the United States politics right now. And I really think that holding these people accountable to what they say they're going to continue to do is something we need to keep an eye on. You know, Jim Semivan was more than expressive with Melinda by saying that TTSA does not view the phenomenon as a threat. And so it'll be interesting to see how people like him step up, if they do step up. And I also think it'll be interesting to see what UFO, UAP activists, disclosure activists like Steve Bassett and Paradigm Research Group, how they're going to continue to push this envelope of disclosure via government. You know, now we've kind of said the iron's hot now. My fear is we're starting to see that iron cool off before we can strike with it, you know? And yeah, I think TTSA folding or these guys stepping down hurts the community at large. But I also know that big change comes from big change, you know, from big things happening. So I don't see Lou walking away from ufology after pouring his heart and soul credibility into it. So I'm actually excited to see where he's going to take it from here. I think TTSA will be okay. You know, like the cockroach, they'll survive somehow. And that's not a bad thing. I don't want them to disappear. I think the more voices in the community, the better, honestly.
Absolutely. And I really hope that they are able to find some way to keep going and be a little bit more positive. But I really do believe that somewhere, somehow, as great as it is to play with the big spooks, you still have to try and get the UFO community involved. There's smart people, okay? There's very brilliant people in this field, and we have to be able to bring it forward. We totally have to be able to bring it forward. Maybe Tom will see that. Maybe he won't. We will soon see. It's not on us. He's the one with the multi-million-dollar investment. We're just the people from the outside. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio with Paul Leach and hanging out with me for hour 3 to talk about the To the Stars Academy article, which can be found at uapresearch.com and spacedoutradio.com. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god itself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. Hanging on out on Spreaker, YouTube, LDAP, Revolution Radio, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for sharing your evening with us, because together, my friends, Nicole, get ready to say it, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Train has docked for the night, but tomorrow, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we got room for them too. Good night. All right, we're clear.
Woohoo! That's the best intro and outro song.
It is. I'm not going to lie. Mr. Bumblefoot hit the nail on the head with this one. He totally did.
It is. It's epic.
He rock and or rolled with it.
You know, when I listen, when I'm not on the show, because I do listen, I'm in the chat. You know, I always find myself like bobbing my head.
You can't help it. You can't help it.
Yeah,
It's just the
I
way
agree.
it is. It's just the way it is. You know?
You know what we didn't touch on a little bit
What?
was the fact that all these guys in TTSA and the government side of it and everything, they are that mindset, that military background, government background, you know, and these guys that are stepping away like Lou and Mellon and we're going to forget his name again.
Steve Justice.
Steve Justice. It's like a superhero name. You should remember that. It'll be interesting to see, because with them leaving, we know there's people lurking in the ranks, like Hal Putoff.
Yes, hold on.
You know,
hold on one second. Thank you, Teresa, for the lovely and wonderful super chat. That is very Christmassy of you. Thank you for your continued love and support of this show. We love you. Thank you.
Aw.
That was nice.
There's been such a nuts and bolts focus to what TTSA has put out. And just knowing that there's people in the ranks like Hal Putoff and what he's worked on before, it would be nice to see the wooier side come out instead of just the nuts and bolts military sighting type witness. I don't know.
Oh, I agree with you. I need you to do me a favor. Talk to the audience about this for a little bit here. I just got to quickly run my dog out. I'll be right back.
I'm here. I got to open the chat back up. I'm coming. What will happen to Hal Putoff? That's the first question I've seen. You know, I think Hal's going to keep doing what Hal's always done. And, you know, he's never been very vocal. That's why his comments over the last couple of years have kind of just been really special. But I also know Hal is past that retirement age and he's still working, and he's done amazing work on the wooier aspects of this field. And I don't know, I've been wishing and hoping for a Hal Putoff tell-all. But I have no idea if he has ulterior plans to move on from TTSA. I don't know if he'll be one of the ones leaving or staying. The woo side of ufology is what puts a lot of scientists off that weren't into the topic before. I can agree with that to an extent. I will say yes, that, you know, the tried and true scientific method, let's deduce, come up with an experiment, find out what this is. You know, that's often what we associate with scientific evidence or scientific interest. And a lot of times it comes down to money and funding, not necessarily a lack of desire to want to explore these wooier topics. But we've also seen a shift with this. I mean, the God particle and the Hadron Colliders, and you know, this leap into the quantum world that goes so hand in hand with how experiencers describe the phenomenon. I think that's where the envelope pushing with science, I think that's where the interest lies or will lie in the future. Oh, PBR Street Gang. Putoff has sworn off Scientology for decades and decades now. You can't still throw him in with that camp. And we all know Scientologists are like ufology's dirty little secret. None of us want to talk about the crazy Scientologists. what I find with scientists is they're very specialized in one field of study. And you can't be that compartmentalized when you're trying to figure out such a broad phenomenon.
I'm back.
Oh, Brian Smith wants to know, what's the smallest UFO you have heard of in size?
Oh, goodness.
If you're talking about physical craft, I would say they've come in all sizes. And one that's coming to mind is maybe on the smaller side is Jim Peniston's Craft of Unknown Origin, a 9x9 pyramidal triangle craft, I guess is a way to describe it. That's relatively small when you're thinking, but then you got to account for the orbs or intelligent light objects.
Right.
Those have been reported as being, as big as the horizon down to small pinpoints. So if you want to classify that as a craft, then I would say pinpoint sized orb is the smallest I've come across.
I think too, what we'll do here is, because there's still 104 people tuned in. If you guys have any questions regarding the news of the To the Stars Academy, put your questions in our chat room in capital letters, and I will, myself and Nicole will try and answer them for you. This, like I said, this is pretty big news today of this group. And trust me, I'm not saying this is good news. Okay, I don't think that this is good news whatsoever for the TTSA, for ufology, for a lot of things. I mean, look, I can fully admit I was never a staunch supporter of the To the Stars Academy, but I don't think this is good news for what we're doing until we see what is actually going to happen with Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon. And this is something that needs to be discussed in a formal journalistic type manner. And we have to be able to discuss this, because for so long we weren't allowed, lack of a better term, to discuss outside of the merits, because the TTSA brought in a lack of a better term, a great divide within the UFO community. They had their staunch supporters who would die at the stake for everything that they were doing, and then they had their very loud and vocal detractors, from everybody from current ufologists to the general public, with everything. I mean, it's the same argument as, one of the arguments that I didn't talk about in the article was about aliens. With the To the Stars Academy, we weren't allowed to talk about aliens. And for a lot of people out there, that rubbed them the wrong way, myself included. As an experiencer, myself included on that. And every time we tried to bring the two together, there was a lot of infighting about that. And, that was one of the difficult parts. Let's get to Nikki's steam train Mark in Australia. How's later today looking? Please give us an update to let us know if we are still alive. Thank you. Oh, and thank you, Noble Patrick, for the awesome super chat. Really do appreciate that. Thank you. Steam Train Mark is asking, hi, Dave. Has Tom DeLonge made a statement? No, I did reach out to Tom DeLonge's camp today regarding this, and I did not receive any word whatsoever or any comment whatsoever from them. I would have wanted to put it in the article. I thought that would have been fair journalism. However, at the time that we went to print with it, well, technically not print, that's the old school way of saying things, they had not responded to another media request that we have put out through Spaced Out Radio, and now with my helping out with with Joel at UAPresearch.com. So that was not brought forward at all. Nikki is asking, where do groups like TTSA get their funding from? How easy would it be to pull or remove that kind of giant funding from these types of groups? The TTSA is hemorrhaging money. Who pulled the money? Well, the money came from, they raised over $2.2 million through crowdfunding. Oh, what is this? Hold on. Miss Pickles, thank you so much. I didn't know you were Canadian, but thank you so much for the amazing super chat. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Wow. Between you, Noble Patrick, let's give a rundown here quickly. Sorry. I mean, we had some amazing super chats tonight. Miss Pickles, Patrick Noble, Gorgeous Teresa, Dirty Filth, Alaska's Greatest Athlete, Grendel. You know, amazing super chats. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to all of you. Nikki, the funding came from the crowdfunding. That was a big part of it, of $2.3 million. We knew in the first SEC filings that $750,000 of that would go directly to Tom DeLonge, and portions of other monies would as well. And from there it was divvied out. And from what I had heard, that DeLonge was having to fund a lot of this on his own merit. And, whether you agree with that or not, we don't know where the rest of the money was coming from. If they were having private money, there was some talk about the CRADA they signed with the United States Army worth $750,000. Not a lot of money, but, I mean, that could be thrown into that. Whether they actually received the money from the CRADA, we don't really know. We don't know. So, that is kind of what it's all about. You want to add to that, Nikki?
No, I think you covered the bases. I mean, I will add that over the course of the years, that crowdsourcing minimum amount has raised significantly. I think just 3 years ago, it was $250. And now the latest one I've come across has been $750. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of true to form with ufology. There's always more expenses going than money coming in.
Michael Boyle, one of my most beautiful critics, handsome guy, likes his cherry Pepsi, not cherry Coke, cherry Pepsi. He says, Dave, you're definitely taking a victory lap, though. A great divide in the UFO community. So what? What was the UFO community doing other than talking at conferences and selling books? Michael's exactly right. Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
TTSA, whether you love them or hate them, they did an immaculate amount of work at bringing this to the forefront. Now, they may have not done anything to advance ufology per se, but in order to bring this topic to the public, to get politicians speaking about it, to help gain the UAP task force, to help gain politicians talking about it, presidents talking about this, they did a lot of good work. They really did. And you can't take that away from them. Whether you agree with the TTSA or not, you cannot take those wins away from them, because they are wins. I mean, nobody in ufology, doesn't matter whether it's Stanton Friedman, Richard Dolan, Linda Moulton Howe, Art Bell, even George Knapp, have ever been able to get the mainstream, well, maybe outside of Knapp, considering he works for KLAS TV in Las Vegas, okay? But they were never able to cross that mainstream media coverage that the To the Stars Academy was able to do. And they do need to be commended for that. And whether that was DeLong, whether that was Elizondo, whether that was Mellon, or a combination of all of them, they did do some good things. You can't just shit on a group and kick them while they're down. You can't. That's not fair. Okay? That's not fair at all. You know, we may not like the process. We may not like the process at all. But the fact is, they did more in 3 years at bringing real mainstream coverage to this than the field of ufology did in the last 50. And that's the truth. That's the truth of it all. You don't have to believe it. But if you look at it critically, that is the truth. Nicole, your thoughts?
I agree. TTSA has, shown the spotlight on our community, whether they embraced the community themselves or not. I will say there are organizations out there that have done a lot for our community in terms of MUFON with the Experiencer Research Association, or their Experiencer Response Team, or groups like Edgar Mitchell's Free. And I think our community at large is very introverted to a point. We do like to talk and share our stories, but when it comes down to the public, I think the ridicule factor and the undereducation factor has driven most of these groups into that comfortable position of, they're in their own little micro world. They're protected by their own bubble. They don't really need the public approval or, the spotlight shined on what they're doing, as long as they're helping the people that contact them and need or want help. And I think that's where TTSA was a little different. I think they were able to come out guns blazing, shine a spotlight on this, but that was also their, pun intended, alienation of the community, And
but let's also be fair too. They never said that they were here for the UFO community. Now, to me, on a personal note, and this is just my opinion, I think, and maybe to the disagreement of many out there, but I think that was a wrong by them. I think they calculated that very wrong.
I do too. I think they had the presence at the moment that they came in or out publicly. I think they had the presence and the credibility that they could have pushed that envelope further. And I'm even thinking about what James Fox has said with the evolution of his films that he's done. He was always very cautious to not include too much of the contact cases, and he was able with the phenomenon to finally, bring that into his films a little more. And I think that's for the general public at large. I think all of us, walk this fine line of how we even say, oh, well, we can call something unidentified flying object, but we cannot make that leap to say that it's alien or there's aliens manipulating the crafts. Nobody wants to cross that line at the general public podium, but that is something we all talk about in the community, where it's like, yes, we know we can't call a UFO an alien ship or infer that aliens are in there, but then we all go, we know there is. And we jump past that. And I think groups and organizations that get this national attention hold back this information And instead, they have that opportunity to push it forward with cases that are credible. And I think that's where they dropped the ball. I mean, they unidentified, nothing but military witness, military witness, military witness. Well, why not go back to older cases with military witnesses like Terry Lovelace, or revisit and push Jim Peniston's incident, which in my mind is like living ufology. His case is still unfolding to this day. So why wouldn't we want to shine public attention on that? And I just, I think it even goes back to what we say in the community about the public in general. Are they able to handle disclosure? Will the Globe be able to handle this without freaking out or buying up all the toilet paper and running to the bunker? And, we're never going to know until we force feed these topics to the public. I mean, we keep waiting for mainstream media like Fox News or the New York Times to really dive deep into our ufology, not ufology for the public, what we consider true ufology. And I think the world can handle it. I think there's the love of the strange that we all know is out there. But what is lacking is that there is an educated side to this woo and research that has been done. But if we're afraid to talk about contact, whether it's human initiated contact or visitation, I just think we're not giving the rest of humanity enough credit. I mean, these things do take time. Social change takes time, but it can't start to change until we make it at the forefront. And TTSA could have been that forefront. And I don't know what it will be now other than what has been, experiencers coming on like shows like this and speaking and getting people in the public interested enough to listen and do research for themselves and decide what they think is too woo or, the right avenue to pursue. And I can say from my own experience, that has changed for me drastically over the last 3 years. It really has been this push in my own research to dive into these communities. I won't say any names, but I was bashed a few weeks ago on a show. And it was brought up that I had verbally attacked my former research partner, and he had no idea why. And I thought that was a little skirting on his behalf because he absolutely knew what we fought about because it was the only kind of heated argument that we had ever had. And he was very much into nuts and bolts research. And the argument and why I got upset with him is that with knowing the full history of ufology, he could talk about this case, that case, this case, that case, and give you the statistics, give you the logistics, tell you if there was, physical trace, this, that. It was great and brilliant. But when it came down to discussions that involved contactees or experiencers, that's when I realized that even this person that I had so much respect for in the community still was selling himself short and his own research short because he blew off every contactee as either being a lunatic or based his opinion off somebody else debunking them in some way, shape, or form. And that led him on a path really to not research deeply any contact cases, whether it's, Travis Walton or Betty and Barney Hill, or I'm trying to think of maybe some more controversial ones.
Well,
even like Adam Adamski. And what I've noticed is that nuts and bolts researchers cannot tell you the history of the contactee movement through to today's experiencers. And so, go ahead.
No, please finish up.
I think I was starting to ramble. And I was just saying that might be the biggest change that I made in my research. I did case after case after case for years, and I was just, on a search for orbs and craft and, anything physical trace and cases like that. And then you naturally develop this history that, leads you to people like Hal Puthoff and NIDS and the Cosmic Club and, on and on and on. But then I realized from debunkers that I ran with or skeptics that I ran with that I myself didn't have an education. And I talked about being an experiencer, but I could not tell you like the evolution of contactees to today. And that was one of the things I decided to dive into. Were people like Adamski really complete phonies or fakes, or have they been misunderstood throughout the years based on this, lens of one person saying that they were debunked or a fraud? One person's proof when they may not know all the circumstances involving a case, and it was disheartening to me, but at the same time, it forced me to research and look into things for myself instead of relying on what I found on social media that somebody that, even though they're well respected, they said this. I didn't just let myself be spoon-fed other people's research anymore. It really made me look at their research and then do my own and then draw some conclusions. And I noticed that quite often I found I had a conflicting opinion after that. I went in thinking, I'm going to find all the evidence on why, and I'm just throwing out Adamski right now. I'm going to find out all the evidence of why Adamski was debunked. Or who's another one? Who was the one that was making models from like old Coleman lanterns? And that's the excuse that everybody gives. It's like, he was making these things up. Well, when you really read into it, he was making the models to kind of convey what these things could look like, and we have people that do models today, like there's the triangle model that we just discussed weeks ago. And I think it's needed to have a visual, or it becomes like an obsession for people to be able to explain it without just leaving it up to somebody else's imagination. But then when you really get into people that ran around with Adamski and went out, and you kind of realize that they were doing CE5 before CE5 was even around. It was like their version of a sitting circle or a CE5 circle or heist. And when you talk about the circle of experiencers that were in it with these contactees, then the lens of research changed for me completely, All
right, I'm going to reel you in here.
Okay.
I'm reeling. Give a few tugs on the line there to just make sure you're still there. Open it up to our chat room on YouTube. If you have any questions about the TTSA news, please feel free to ask away. We'd love to be able to try and answer your questions. Put them in capital letters if you don't mind. Nicole Sakach joining me here as well. And we're going to stick around for a couple more minutes here. and just see what you guys have to say or think. Please feel free to let us know. Now, I am going to try and write, as I stated earlier, I'm going to try tomorrow and write an op-ed piece on just some of the things that I saw over the years of, the To the Stars Academy, good and bad. And, I'm sure Michael Boyle will call it a hit piece, which it won't be, but he likes to dig into me a little bit. And that's why I love him, is because he's one of my toughest critics, and I love trying to, get things right so that way he can hit me even harder. And
you can give us what is it? The estimate of the situation?
Well, no. I mean, you know what? I'll say one thing. There's critics and then there's trolls, and I think somebody like Michael Boyle. I don't know if I can say. I don't know if he wants me to say his Twitter name or not, or if he wants to keep that identity in another realm. I'll leave that up to him. But he pushes me, and I had a good conversation with him. Actually, believe it or not, I was talking to Mike the day I blew out. I slipped off my stairs, and then I had a conversation with him for another 40 minutes while I was lying on the floor because I wanted to continue the conversation. True story. And anyways, there's a big difference between critics and people who are trolls. Michael is a staunch critic, and I admire that about him. And we need more of that. We need people to push, the public to push people like me or like you or other researchers or the To the Stars Academy, but push with demanding those facts. And I think that's what he does. So, yeah, there. Now, don't let your head explode over that. He's Foya Boy on Twitter. Foya Boy on Twitter. So he's vicious, he's rude, he's crass. But if you get him a couple of cherry Pepsis, he turns into a lush puppy dog quite quickly. And if you scratch his belly while he's drinking the cherry Pepsi, it makes his day perfect, to be honest. But no, we need critics, though, Nicole, to help us push for those answers. We're not going to have all the answers. I have answers that I can't give out. I want to, but I can't, because people have asked me not to do that. And you have to be careful with that. But we need the critics to push us to ask those tougher questions to find that information. And that's why, I respect a guy like Michael or other people. Danny Silva's come at me over the years. Joe Merja's come at me over the years. James Iandoli, Hulkamania Chris Wolford has come after me. All right? A number of them have come after me over the years because they thought I was talking a bunch of shit. And I'm okay with that because they pushed me to find better answers. And that's all we can ask. That's all we can ask. Let's get to a question here. Mere Person is asking, Dave, how do you think we can break through the talking head mentality that is so pervasive in this? Well, that's actually a good question, and I don't know how to do that. We have to start. Let me think about this for a second. There's a lot. I'll answer it this way. There's a lot of great researchers out there, but not every researcher has the right answers. Lord knows I don't have the right answers, and I'm not a researcher. Nicole can tell you point blank from working with Grant Cameron, Grant doesn't have all the answers. Richard Dolan doesn't. None of them. Not even the people who are pro or con TTSA. What you have to do, and this is what I try and do, and I think it works for me. I can't say it's going to work for you or anybody else. You have to learn to read between the lines. Take what Dolan is saying. Take what Lou Elizondo is saying. Take what what Danny Silva is saying, or Joe Mergia, or Grant Cameron, or Nicole Sakach, or many others are saying, and read between the lines and glue those pieces together, because that's where the story is. Everybody has their own little tidbit of information. Not everybody has the full story. So if you want the answers, you have to come to your own conclusions by reading between the lines. And then you take what you've found, and then you ask someone whom you trust in this field as a researcher, who will give you the time to talk to them. Okay, and you say, hey, what do you think about this? Or this is my theory. This is my personal opinion. And believe it or not, you get a lot of information that way from just being an astute observer. And that's what I have tried to do, because like I said, I'm not a researcher. I have had a total of 0 phone calls back to me from groups like the TTSA. I've had 0 phone calls from some of the top researchers who've been on this show and just won't pick up their phone. Not that they think ill of me, but they're busy with other stuff, or they don't have time. Excuse me. Or whatever the answer may be. So there's always a way. There's always a source. There's always a different route around things. Like even with this story today that I got, if you go look at the story, it was set up. I set up the Dolan quote from a couple weeks ago, because a few people, I believe Nicole, well, you were one that was knowing that I was working on this story. Richie G knew a little bit of it, but I didn't give you guys full detail. Okay, and that's why I got the quote, because I wanted that quote just in case I had enough to write this story, just in case. So you have to be prepared that way. And there was a quote there that I was able to get from Richard. You lean on your sources quite a bit. You have to. And as much as people hate sources, they are a very valuable tool in putting together the information. Once you have that information, now you can go to other people for quotes. Now, I was prepared to break this story a week ago, but I didn't have the smoking gun piece that George Knapp got out of Lou Elizondo last night on Coast to Coast. I didn't have that. So what I had to do was, I knew I had to it would either come and I would have to continue to work the phones, or someone, I thought it was either going to be Knapp or it was going to be Danny Silva who broke this story. Those were the two that I was leaning on. I had already talked to Tim McMillan about it, and he was not working the angle. He was working on something else. And I had his blessing to run with it. And not that I needed it, but he was fully supportive of what we were doing. And I couldn't get that smoking gun quote that Mr. Knapp got from Elizondo last night. I didn't have that. That's why I couldn't run with it. And I didn't feel comfortable running with it because it left a lot of holes in the story. So when Lou said what he said last night, it was the glue I needed to bring everything else back together. And that's where I had already had the quote from Tom Whitmore. I had talked to Bob McGuire earlier today and got the quote, which I thought was stunning, about, because I had totally forgot about the McCaslin and WikiLeaks. And he gave a great perspective of that. I needed both sides of the ledger, the pro and con, for the story, which is how I went to Rich Giordano and I went to Joe Mergia and got their quotes. So there was a little bit of everything brought together on that to make it work. But
right, and I would say you did it brilliantly. And I think what we can talk about a little bit, is this Israeli story that has come out over the last couple weeks as well.
Yes.
And you were bringing up earlier a few moments ago about knowing how to read between the lines, or at least being in the field long enough or researching things long enough that you come across these stories that, yes, you don't necessarily run with, or they've come up in some way, shape, or form over the decades. And, that's so many of us in the community, that Israeli story broke and what he, was quoted as saying. And I know a lot of it was misinterpreted through translation and then was regurgitated correctly. But that's immediately what it was. It was like, oh, the mainstream media is running this story based on who he is, but didn't follow it up with anything else from the community, like the fact that he was referencing the Eisenhower Agreement, from the 50s, or that he was speaking about, how did they term it, ufology lore. He was talking from his own research into ufology lore, not necessarily from insights that he gained from his position. And that's why people like Grant, who have been doing this for 40 years, were able to immediately turn to social media and throw up the Eisenhower stuff and talk about every time the Galactic Federation has been mentioned, in our community over and over again, But did the mainstream media include any of that in their coverage of this man's blazing statements? No, they didn't. And where was their fact checking on what he was saying? Or were they just running with a ufology tagline, or like we say on social media, the clickbait? I thought of all the attention of stories of all the people that could come out and say something. Why did mainstream media run with this guy's statements when he's talking about stuff that's been around for 50 plus years? I don't know. There was just no follow through or backup to what they printed. And now, now it's kind of a joke.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out going forward here. A question from Trust. So the general in the WikiLeaks was Tom's friend's dad, right? No. The one he met at the backyard party? No, he did not meet General McCaslin at the Skunk Works party. No. General McCaslin was a little bit different from there. So I still have question on how that all came together. I'm not sure if that's truthful or not. I have no understanding of whether or not that story is true. So I can't answer that any more than that. Just that I personally have questions of whether or not it's true. But our YouTube crowd, it is about 12:45 or close to it a.m. here on the West Coast. Some of us have to get up in the morning for a hard day's work at the office, and that would be me. But I will be back tomorrow night on the show, and our guest tomorrow night will be, oh hell, who is it? I get the dates. It's either I believe it's Sebastian Martin. Sebastian Martin will be tomorrow night, I believe. Let me just check the event schedule here. And yes, Sebastian Martin tomorrow night on the show, or later tonight, however you want to call it, the following day in Aussie time. And we will be talking remote viewing, everything from the remote viewing to this secret space program. We may touch on the TTSA again because that's still fresh news. I'm sure there will be more. I'm going to try and get another article out tomorrow for spacedoutradio.com and for UAPresearch.com. And if you haven't already, go to the UAP Research YouTube page. We've got a couple of interviews that we have done there now. We're going to be doing bi-weekly interviews and potentially down the road some more regarding experiencers and their personal experience. It's just a one-on-one recorded interview, and so far so good. We just did one last night with Ryan Bledsoe, the son of Chris Bledsoe, and his experiences. So make sure you go hit subscribe to that. That would be pretty cool if you check that out. UAP Research YouTube channel. Let me see if I can get you the link here. 1 second here. And go from there. Oh, damn capital letters. Let's see here. No, that's not it. Where is it here? There's the other one. There it is. There it is. It's just a brand new channel. There's only 103 subscribers. There's only 2 videos, but we'd appreciate it. And oh, Brian, wow. Thank you for the Australian super chat, man. I didn't know you were an Aussie. I would have been asking you how tomorrow's looking and if we're able to survive, if I'm alive. Anyways, thank you so much for the wonderful super chat. I really do appreciate that, my friend. Thank you. And that really does mean a lot. So there's that. I've posted the link. It doesn't have a name yet because it's still a brand new channel. It's only been up for a couple of weeks, but make sure you click on that. Make sure you go hit subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And we'll go from there. So make sure you check it on out. And you're a part of us, and we'll be a part of you, and we'll all do it tomorrow night again with Sebastian Martin. Remote viewing to the Secret Space program. We got a great show. Should be some major woo tomorrow night. Sebastian's always good for some good woo. We'll talk to you tomorrow night, everyone. Much love. Thank you to everyone for the super chats. And, oh, by the way, before we shut this down, let's just quickly do a quick peek here. See how many we are away. We're at 9,788, which means we need 212 more people. 212 more people in order to hit that 10,000 before the end of the year. I think we can still do it. We got 10 days, 9 days now. All right, everyone, much love. We'll talk to you very soon, and see you tomorrow night.